T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I'm joined by two of my very closest friends in the reptile industry, Mr. Alex Myers and Mr. Rob Christian. We have quite a bit to talk about tonight, everything from scrub pythons, arachnids, sailfin dragons, the reptile industry as a whole. Anything that we may meander into is fair game. But before we get into the episode, as always, USARC. So USARC is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle that we all enjoy so much. Check out usarc.org to learn all of the relevant information you need to know about the organization and for alerts and updates on any new legislation that is being introduced on either local or national levels. As a community, we have strength in numbers, so if you are not already a USARC member, please look into becoming a USARC member today, as it all helps in our fight towards keeping our rights for our animals we love. All right, everybody. Thank you all for joining in tonight. Shout out to everyone who's in the chats already. This is bound to be a fun one. If you are here on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. It would be most appreciated. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. There's a new podcast that drops every single day of the week here on the channel from some of the best hosts in the game, talking about a wide range of different topics. So if you are looking for reptile-related podcast content, you have come to the right place. We're also available in the audio-only formats on Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. A follow and a 5-star review would be most appreciated on those platforms. And that is the little housekeeping at the beginning. So without further ado, let's get these guys on the show, get this rolling. How's it going, guys?
Heyo.
What's up?
Big shout out to you guys for kind of making this happen last minute. Things sometimes go awry with podcast scheduling and whatnot. So most appreciated that you guys were able to do this on short notice.
Don't I know about that?
And right away, Alex, this is very right. It is scrub o'clock over here. That's most
right.
Definitely the case. It is always scrub o'clock, but it is particularly scrub o'clock right now. Alex, to start with you, man. You were on here pretty recently, but how's it going? How are things? How are the animals?
Everything's going good. Spring is definitely in the air by me. Finally, we're going from our beautiful, frigid Minnesota winters to less freezing cold. By that, my daytime highs are finally hitting that pristine 35 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit range. I forget that you guys are so far south, so I know you're probably thinking I'm insane. But the animals are picking up on it. It's been pretty awesome because specifically with my Chinese water dragon projects, they're literally on their first month now of like 12 hours of daylight. So I ramp it down. I pretty much mimic the Red River Delta region of Vietnam, which is where most of those were collected from for the pet trade. And so the males are starting to head bob. They're eating less because they're more focused on breeding. And, I'm really hoping that this might be a good sign for what's going to happen this year. Just because with my move literally last October and getting everybody here, I was sort of worried that was going to throw them off for a year. But I'm hoping it was sort of like a good transition into the winter here, and now they're waking back up, and hopefully it'll be a good year for Chinese water dragons.
I feel like in that first year, full cycle and really makes a big difference, as far as transitioning a collection goes, especially with certain species. I mean, shoot, with scrub pythons, it seems like you want to move every year if you're a scrub python breeder, but that doesn't seem to be the case with most species. But yeah, it's good to hear that everything that you got going on is doing the right thing finally. So it's a good feeling to have those pieces come together like that.
It's rewarding, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
water
Rob, how
dragons
about,
are largely underrated. Like they were such a staple of the hobby for so long because they were imported in mass. But like, if you just look at an adult water dragon, they're freaking incredible. Like they're iguanas but better.
yeah.
You know?
Smaller and more tractable as adults,
Yeah.
way easier to keep in my opinion than like a green iguana or even like some of the cyclura. Like again they're like a little bit smaller than an Australian water dragon or my other love, the sailfins, but it's definitely a lizard that could be done easily for like even somebody wanting that apartment lizard that's not going to be like a big ass water monitor or something. So yeah, I love them.
Green reptiles. Everyone loves green reptiles. So like,
Yeah.
That is true.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean they fit so many needs that some other species don't fully hit. Like some of the aspects of a bunch of different iguanas and monitors and whatnot. They'll like a water monitor will hit a few aspects and will miss on a handful of others. Tenosaurus, Cyclura, whatever. But like the water dragon just seemed to fit all of those criteria super well, and they're definitely getting more popular. And I think a lot in that is due to the work that Alex is putting in with them, but like they definitely deserve more credit than they already get now, for sure.
Heck yeah. Sick.
Cool.
Love it. I hope you produce some really nice babies this year.
I hope so. I had the one clutch hatch 3 weeks ago now, but the female that laid those back in December, that was one, she came from Europe. So I just think her clock was off, but it was really interesting. I took a lot of thorough notes on this. So on average, like if it's a good breeding season, I've gotten like anywhere from 2 to 3 clutches. I had 1 year where I got 4 clutches out of a female, but pretty consecutively, it's a 35 days on the dot between clutches. With my one older animal that was breeding at around 10 years of old, it was 39 days. So I suspect maybe her body took a little bit, more to kick in gear right after laying. But this one was interesting because she laid in December. And it's almost like she paused. Like her body was like, why am I laying? Even though the days were shorter. And she ate, but she didn't swell up right away. And literally as soon as February hit, and this time the daylight now was 11 and a half hours that I was keeping them at, I saw her swell up more. And then 3 weeks after that, the hip bones are present. So she's post-ovulation. And she did lay another clutch of eggs. But it was weird, like sort of observing her, in a sense, controlling her cycle there. Whereas I'd be curious if the photo period was longer, the ambient temperature was higher, she would have just followed that 5-week period. So we'll see what happens this summer if she does another clutch. But I don't want her to crank out too many eggs because I don't want her to calcium crash or anything. But it was really just fascinating to observe that. They're really intelligent.
That's cool. So
I love them. She's got really pretty blue stripes on her too. So
open.
Yeah. See, they're just so cool. I get way too excited about them. So much for the clock. I'm sorry, gents.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Literally, I remember back in the day, there was like one person that was like trying to selectively breed water dragons. And they were trying to breed for like bigger blue stripes on them. And this was like,
I think that was Michael Spears. I have an old like sapphire dragon, because there was Sandfire Dragon Ranch, which was the guy in California. I forget his name. He passed away a couple of years ago, I think. But I remember the name Michael Spears in some old Reptiles magazine article. And then in Philippe de Vaugelay's book, he mentions Sapphire Dragon Ranch, how he was trying to breed for all blue ones, which from what I suspect, it's kind of like Basilisk, where that was just a lack of like proper UV lighting back in the day, and then a good nutritional diet. But I want to say, like, literally, there weren't morphs, but written in that book is "quote unquote" tiger water dragons by him, because he was trying to select these. It's cool. That's definitely something I'd like to work towards. But honestly, right now, since there's no new bloodlines coming in, I'm just trying to procure as many wild caught animals as I can, just to get the ball rolling, keep the genetics flowing, and then maybe if I get to the point where I have room for F3, F4 holdbacks on top of my, current founding stock, then I can start to play around with that. But honestly, right now, I'm just sort of trying to keep everything as diverse as possible without having to reduce to inbreeding right away for line bred traits. So we'll see what happens. I mean, as long as I don't die tomorrow, I ideally want to be doing this for the next 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
plenty
always,
of time.
it's just, I think that's something that should be emphasized a lot to people, starting a project like that is, you might want to get right into a morph thing or line breeding, but keeping those bloodlines strong, that should be top priority with any species that you're trying to establish a good captive population of that are, primarily brought in as imports. If you have a really nice pair and start your whole line off of that really nice pair and don't breed into it because you want to keep a look going, well, that project's going to run its course pretty quickly in comparison to if you focused on genetics and bloodline from the jump. So, something that not enough people think about. So,
especially when you're just establishing everything, and if you're willing to put a little bit of time and let everything grow up a little bit, you can kind of see how they start to develop and get a better eye for what you should be looking for and how things will develop. I had a couple people ask me over this past weekend. They're like, "Oh, so like, what do you think this scrub's going to look like when it gets bigger?" And I'm like, "I don't fucking know." Like, I've only seen a handful of clutches that I've watched them develop from hatchling to even subadult. So it's tough for me to say. When I see like Amazon tree boa litters, I used to be on the Amazon tree boa forums a million years ago, and I used to just watch as people would post their litters, and then as they would sell a couple babies and keep some babies and watch them develop and everything. So like when I see a juvenile Amazon tree boa, for the most part, I'm like, oh, I kind of have a pretty good idea of what this is going to look like as it gets older.
Yeah.
Just like little things that you notice, here and there, like, oh, if it's got pattern on the head, but it's a mostly colored animal, it's probably going to develop some more black as it gets older. Even if it's like patternless otherwise, it's probably going to get some black and patterning on it. And like when you're able to see a larger sample size of what everybody's doing and all, watch different clutches and litters of animals develop over time, it's easy to pick up on those things. But we're so early in scrubs, in water dragons, and a lot of these other species that it's like, I don't know what the hell they're going to look like, man. Like I these babies that I produced, I'm still looking at them like, crap, I had no idea it was going to look like this. I thought it was going to be like way more reduced. I did not think that it was going to, and the pattern developed more as it got older. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. I'm glad I didn't fucking get rid of this thing.
Yeah. I mean, what have you seen so far as like kind of some trends or anything that you're looking at as far as any sort of predictors go? What do you think you've picked up on so far?
For like scrubs?
Yeah, for scrubs.
It's tough. Like when they first hatch out, it's like a wash. It's so hard to see any pattern on them. Even with like a flash, I put like heavy lighting on and used the flash and took with like a nice camera and like really turned everything up so I could potentially see the patterning, and you could see like a little bit of the patterning, but even that is not really a good indicator of what they're going to look like after 4 or 5 sheds, because they change so much from the moment that they're born into that first year of their life that it's I haven't seen any like clear indication unless they come out and you can see the dark banding on them immediately.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, that's what this one's going to end up looking like. And it just ends up getting darker.
Yeah.
But with all the ones that are like in betweeners, like a lot of them are tweeners where it's like, I can see a little bit of patterning on it, but like it doesn't look crazy. Yeah. And then, some of them grow up and it's like, oh, they have hardly any pattern on them. And then some of them, they develop more pattern. And then some of them are like right in the middle. So it's at least from the ones that I've done, it's so hard to, at least from that, when they're red, when they're like fresh, there's hardly any way to get a good idea of what they're going to look like in 6 months or a year, besides the ones that are really heavily patterned. Right. Aside from that, it's like, I don't know, they're all good. It's just a wash for me. So like, Daniel from Indo Serpents, he was messaging me about the Highland scrubs that he produced, and he's like, do you think they're going to have like more pattern like this or like that? And I was like, dude, even on the Barnecks, I have such a hard time telling. And on the Highlands, the pattern is so subtle that when they're red like that, I don't know what they're going to look like. It's hard to tell until they start to lose that red, and then you start to see the other colors coming in. And then once you get a little bit of that going on, then it's like, okay, I can kind of get a feel for what direction this might end up going in. But the sample size is so small. It's like you and him. And we're like, okay, cool. We got 2 clutches to compare with, and yours is a little older than his, and yours is the only one that I've seen. besides like the European ones that they did, and those are like the completely different type of
Yeah,
Highlands. So
the really dark, quote
Yeah.
unquote, occipital types. Yeah, that we don't have any of over here. Yeah, the only other data point was the clutch James Opdahl had the year that I had my clutch. I think his were born like a month later, and yeah, I mean, I think it was the same thing where like I mean, my clutch too from the jump. It was like, okay, well, every single one of these looks the exact same. Like I think one had a little bit of pattern that you could distinguish, and that was about it. You know, that one did end up being one of the nicer ones out of the clutch when when it all was said and done, but not the nicest one either. So yeah, it's I don't know. Those were, man, I want to produce Highlands again, man. That was fun. And there, I mean, I bet Daniel will have a pretty easy time, you know, moving anything he wants to out of that clutch. They're popular, and for very good reason. You know, I think now over the last few years, you know, with like me posting, you posting your big male, like people actually know about these snakes now, and they're like, oh, this is like almost a Moluccan at a quarter of the price.
Yep.
With all the same cool behaviors, and they get nicer as they age too, which Moluccans don't do.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like the class Telepus have this little dark secret in their closet that a lot of them end up being like kind of dirty looking as they get older. Where the Highlands, a lot of them, at least the ones that I've seen, besides like the European ones that have like all the like, I don't want to say calicoing, but all the like speckling all over them, and like the black
like a
color
python
in their patterning and everything. A lot of the ones like the ones that I've got and the ones that you've got and the one that Daniel has, they are like, okay, pretty nice. And then they start to hit like 4, 5, 6 foot long. You're like, damn, this thing's freaking nice. And then when they get 9, 10, 11 foot long, they look really nice. And they don't turn like darker like some of the class Telepus do. Like, don't get me wrong, I still love Moluccans and I want some, but the Highlands, like when they're adults, they are really, really striking. And the contrast on the class Telepus, like that like neon highlighter yellow, is very attractive. But I mean, the gold is really freaking nice too.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. And I think that, you know, more people are starting to catch on to that as well. But yeah, that's definitely, you know, it is kind of ironic how the one scrub that you probably would say is like the most high demand scrub python is the only one that doesn't just get continuously nicer the entirety of its life. So, but I mean, with that said though, I have adult males that like after they shed, it's like, oh my gosh, that's insane. And then through the course of that cycle before they shed again, can darken up a little bit on up top. So, you know, it's part of keeping them, but yeah, I don't know. They're amazing. So how are those eggs looking, man? How's stuff coming along?
Good. I mean, I literally was just talking about them this past weekend with some of my buddies at the Raleigh show, and I was like, I don't remember. I think I pulled them like a couple weeks. It's got to be almost a month ago now. I have been like so out of it. This year has been just like fucking really out there and has just like thrown me for a mental loop. So I've not been like in the zone with all of my things. So I pulled those eggs. I didn't write anything down. I just have like pictures on my phone. I'm like, okay, what day did she lay them? Okay, cool. And then just this past weekend, I was like, okay, what's like 80, 85 days away from that so I can know to look in the incubator. And I looked that up this weekend because I've just been so out of it. But the eggs are looking good. I had 9 good eggs, 1 infertile egg, first time breeding for this female. So I'm not going to complain. Everything looks good. And I'm hoping that I'm like what I'm expecting out of this clutch, quote unquote, is like the nicest scrubs that I've ever produced.
Yeah.
Because the female is just like screaming, like incredible looking. And then the offspring that the male has produced with the other females, there's always like a chunk of them that have got really nice, crazy pattern on them. And so I'm thinking that if that lines up with, she's already got pretty heavy patterning on her, it's going to be like phenomenal, absolutely awesome babies. And so those will be April 25th will be day 80. So that's when I'm going to start looking in the incubator. Until then, the incubator doesn't exist to me. I've looked like twice in the last month and I'm like, okay, you're still good. But I'll probably check again in another couple weeks, just make sure the moisture levels are okay. When I do that stuff, I try not to overcomplicate it. I like mix my vermiculite. I'm like, okay, this kind of feels okay. I put the eggs in there, put it away, and then I check back in like 10 days usually, and I'm like, okay, is everything cool? The temperatures are okay. And this year, my I don't know what I did with my temperature probe for my thermostat or whatever, but my incubator was running kind of cool, and so it ran at like 84 or 83 for a week or two or something, and then I just now over the last week got it up to like it's at like 86 or 87, and I incubated all the other ones at 86, so I'll probably keep it at that until like the end of incubation.
Cool. That's awesome. Quick question that came through, Alex. So I still have the babies, but I don't have any left available. But yeah, that was a really crazy clutch. Was not expecting that at all. The like het patternless Southerns, how they just came out with really crazy intricate patterning. I mean, you'd have to imagine that that's like a visual het because neither parent had like any sort of crazy, the dad was patternless and the mom was like a pretty typical like dark Southern animal. And and the babies have like orange laterals and granity, zigzaggy pattern and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that was really, and that's like the thing that's so fun of the stage we're at right now is just like every clutch just has the potential of like bringing up some new new thing that we haven't found out yet about scrubs or scrub breeding. Like, I don't know, that's what's just so much fun about it to me. It's like, there is no playbook, there is nothing, nothing like that. So, we're kind of writing it as we go and discovering new things every year. I don't know, it's been so much fun, especially in this early stage that we're in. So
yeah, my biggest fear is that I'm going to pop out a freaking albino and I'm going to be like, fucking god damn it, this is too much. This is going to be more work than I want to put into this because now everybody's sitting there wanting fucking albinos.
Yeah. Well, I'll just like trade you a whole clutch of something for it. Or
you get it out of here. I don't want to look at
it. Well, I guess on that note, so I guess last year, that ivory looking giant
ivory man
made some waves. Non-scrub people were stoked. Scrub people were divided a little bit. And I think for good reason, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we obviously, for anyone who's into scrubs heavily, they're aware that there are morphs that exist. None of them are in the US. At least the like really significant looking ones. I believe I do have a snake in my collection that has some sort of genetic abnormality, but I can't fully pinpoint what it is at this point. But yeah, so like the T positive Barnack and the, that like leucistic looking Halmahera, the patternless Halmahera. Like, what are your thoughts on all of these scrub morphs existing and what may come of that in the future?
I am like indifferent to it almost. Like let me take that back just a little bit. The ivory was cool as hell. That thing was like really interesting, and I was like, when I saw that, I was hyped. I was like, oh man, if we could get that into the States, that would look really cool, perched up, sitting coiled up like a green tree in an enclosure, at 10 foot long. That thing's gonna look phenomenal. But like the T positive albino Barnack, the T positive albino Halmaheras, they're cool looking, but like I still think that the like normal ones look, I don't want to say cooler, but I'm a sucker for contrast. So anything that's got like lots of contrast to it, that's what I love. And that's one of the things that draws me to Barnacks over some of the other scrub species is that they've got really good contrast. That like gold brown compared to like really crisp black is just really awesome to me, and it's really eye-catching. Whereas like the Southerns, lower contrast. The Halmaheras can have contrast, but then some of them are like more light brown and tan, as opposed to like the Halmaheras that I've got are like dark brown and then light tan. So they've got like really good contrast to them. So I really like things that have lots of contrast. And the T positive albino Halmahera and the T positive albino barneck don't have as much contrast as the typical ones do.
Sure.
And so if they came to the States, I think that people would be interested in them, but I don't think that there would be as much hype around them as if like a T positive, or sorry, a T negative popped up, or, you know, think about like an all white barneck with yellow, you know, bricks down its back, or, you know, down the back of the neck and everything. That would look tight as hell.
That would look awesome.
Or, you know, even if it was the other way around, if it's like, you know, mostly a yellow barneck with, you know, some white bars across the back of its neck, that would look that would look awesome. And so like I remember a million years ago there was a picture out of Australia of that, like, I don't know if it was a T negative albino or a calico or something, King Ornai.
Yes.
I've got it saved on my, like, whenever I find pictures of weird shit, I always save it, but like it's probably buried in the back of every picture that I've ever saved on my phone.
Yeah.
And so
I'm gonna make a very half-ass attempt at finding it right now.
But like that thing, when I saw pictures of that back in the day, I was like, oh, that thing is incredible, but there's no chance of it coming to the US. So I try not to get overhyped about it. I'm like, if something like the ivory was to come to the US, I'd be really excited about that. And I would want to follow it really closely.
Yeah.
The T positive albinos, I'm keeping like a loose eye on because I'm like, okay, those are cool. You know, whatever. They're very interesting. I would like to see more of them. I would love to see what they look like as babies. I bet you they'd be really interesting looking as babies.
Yeah. I haven't even thought about that. That would be
right.
Really, yeah. Dude, I literally have not even thought about that until this second. That would be, I mean, they'd probably be like some sort of kind of like light orangey looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be freaking awesome.
Yeah. So like so I keep tabs on a lot of different things, and just one of the things that I guess has kind of played to my strength over the years in the hobby is that I don't say like I'm a lurker, but I like to watch a lot of different things that people are producing, things that pop up, weird abnormalities, and try and follow along with the people who are doing some of those unusual things to see where it goes and where it develops and where, you know, what the next step is. Because sometimes someone produces something really cool, they keep it, they never breed it, and it just dies there. You know, metaphorically, not physically. Sometimes you get people who produce something weird. They're like, I don't really know what I produce. They sell it to someone who is really into the hobby, and then it blows up and a whole bunch of people didn't pass it. But some things like people produce, they don't really even acknowledge that it's something unusual. And I try and like just follow along to see, because they'll like keep it and grow it, and sometimes they breed it, and trying to see what ends up coming from those things is always really interesting to me. And so I've always kind of done that. Even like back in the days of the forums, I used to try and follow along when people had like little oddball snakes that they would pop out, or lizards. I would just like kind of try and keep tabs on it and see where it went. And sometimes I would message people if they hadn't posted in a while, be like, hey, did like you sell that, or where did it end up going? I want to just, you know, see updated pictures of it or whatever. I do a lot less of that nowadays because I'm like, you know, I got so many other things going on that if they're not posting it, I'm not going digging around looking for stuff. But there's so many interesting things about the scrub morphs, and like the patternless ones don't really do as much for me as the stuff with pattern, because like I said, I like stuff with contrast on it, and patternless stuff typically doesn't have a lot of contrast.
Right. How could
Yeah.
No, I get that. Yeah, and I feel like, you know, a lot of the detractors will cite like, you know, not wanting people to get into these snakes that are like morph chaser kind of thing. I don't know. What do you think about that? I feel like there's multiple sides to that kind of argument.
It's tough. It's really tough because scrubs are just hard to, like, in general, scrubs are really hard to breed. You know, I know, you know, there's very few people who are able to be, up until this point, to be successful past, you know, one clutch.
Right.
Now there's more people being successful with Southerns. So there's like, you know, what probably 24 people that are breeding Southerns in the United States right now. Maybe give or take,
10.
you know?
Yeah.
At least 10, right?
Yeah.
So
plenty.
The code has been a little bit easier to crack with the Southerns. And then
Yeah.
Barnecks, we got less. Clastolepis, we got less. What do they call them now? The Jayapuras, Waminas.
Yeah.
Those ones, not too like if people have got them and they raise them up, they don't seem to be incredibly difficult. There's been a handful of people who have done them, and they've been just like, oh, I had them, they produced. I didn't really have to do anything special.
Yeah.
Whereas the people with the Barnecks, it seems like it's been a little bit more of a struggle to produce them, or if they do, it's like a one-off. And I'm really hyped because some of the people who have been producing them recently, I'm like, oh, I bet you they can do it again. Like TJ, like over I think he's in Arizona.
Yep.
He'll have no problem producing those again. Like I have no doubt in my mind that he'll be able to produce them again. And then, you're producing a crap ton of them. And then I'm producing a couple here. And then, there's a couple other little people who are doing it now. Not little, but like, there's a couple other people who are doing it now. And I got really far away from what the point of this question was, but like with the morphs, right? For those people who are like looking at it, like chasing the morph, scrubs typically don't breed until they're at least 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Like I think Ursula's 5 or 6 years old now.
Yeah.
So the guy who I got her from said that she was a 2020. So 5 years old.
Yeah.
At least bare minimum of feeding, growing, and you're hoping that nothing goes wrong, right?
Right.
And that's if you can get them to reproduce right at that 5-year-old age, which some of them just fucking don't. And so for those people who are like, oh, I'm going to get them and breed them and make a whole bunch of shit, it's like, no. Have you bred any scrubs before? Because I would not drop, $15,000 on a snake that I was like, oh, I'm going to breed this morph without ever having bred them before. And it's not something that people generally produce. Like I could see the mentality for people with like ball pythons, because 10-year-olds can breed ball pythons. You throw 2 of them in a drawer together and you're probably going to end up with some eggs.
Or even like a retic,
Exactly. And it's like the bar is so much lower for those when it comes to the accessibility to information, the amount of people who've been able to do it and do it successfully, and the return on the, quote unquote investment.
Yeah.
Whereas like scrubs, you're going to get what? 10 eggs out of your first clutch if you're lucky. And if it's a recessive trait, now you got to hold back all those babies and hope that you got a good sex ratio. And even if you got a male, you're going to breed them to what? 2 females. It's not really a business plan type thing for people who wanted to just like get into it. And then like scrubs are not for everybody. Sometimes they just bite and piss and like musk all over the fucking place. And so like, someone who's thinking about it as a morph business or something like that, they are probably not going to have a good time, raising a scrub for 5 years to get it to breeding size to hopefully maybe produce some hets or maybe a visual, incomplete dominance or whatever the hell.
Yeah. No, I think that you're right on that. Where like, I think a lot of the people who are concerned about what may happen, are underestimating what a scrub python will put you through. Like, or like, one person in particular was trying to make the claim that like, you can just like fill a CB70 rack full of these snakes and factory farm them out. It's like,
no, no, you can't.
what? It's like,
no.
Could you even fit 1 scrub in a CB70 tub and like it be able to close the tub, nonetheless 2?
There are people who would try it.
They'll buckle out the walls just on their strength alone. Like,
yeah. So I don't know. Like I hear some of those things and I'm like, I don't know if these arguments are valid. I mean, shoot, I bred my first scrubs in a Christmas tree tub, but I mean, that's still a pretty dang big tub as far as tubs go. Yeah. So like, you're not fitting, 300 of them in a garage. Like it's just this is never going to happen. So yeah, I don't know. I think that there's definitely like a fine line with it. Like trying to bring in new people and then getting like people in who don't actually care about the animals and just kind of see it as a money-making opportunity. But I feel like a lot of that comes down to, how those people are educated on the way in. And the ethos of the community that already exists there. like, I think the main comparison that is pretty natural to make is the one of retics. And it's probably as close as you can get from like a biologic standpoint as far as the snake itself goes. But then the retic market has always been, for better or worse, about this is the next project that's going to make a lot of money. So and then the closest that anything got to a pitch for something to do with the animals was the whole super dwarf craze, but that was also just like, hey, now these little retics are going to be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if that's how you start off on it, then no wonder it goes that way, because that's what you're telling everyone who's getting these snakes. Like,
yeah,
and you're not even really emphasizing why these are so much fun to interact with and to keep. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it's inevitably you can't control what people do or want or whatever it may be, but like, I don't know. I've never had anyone message me like, hey, I want to get into the scrub business. What should I do? Like, that's not how it's framed. It's always like, hey, like these things seem really fascinating. I want to learn about them. It's like,
yeah, almost everyone that has messaged me about them is just like, I've heard you say some really nice things about these snakes, and I kind of want to get one. Like, I really want to get one. What should I do? And almost every single time I tell those people, like, I know that I talk about them like very passionately because I like them, but they are
yeah,
super duper not for everybody. So like,
yeah, sure.
if you find them intriguing and you are, enthused by the things that you've heard about them, keep doing research, keep learning, join the scrub group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're
I
following
love
some
that
people
group.
who have got scrubs and ask people about them and like really don't just rush out and buy one. Like, please don't rush out and buy one. Wait, like
Yeah.
really wait, do a little bit more research. If you have questions, message me and I'll talk to you about them. But like, don't go out and just buy one because you really want one because you heard somebody talking about how cool they are, because for some people, they're going to end up having a really bad time because
Yeah.
the mindset that you have to have, for me, like in my opinion, the mindset you have to have when you get a scrub python is not one of like kind of how the hobby is or has been for the last 30 years of like, oh, I'm going to get a couple of these and I'm going to get one of these and I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. And it's like, if you try and do that with a scrub python, you're probably gonna have an awful time because they don't put up with that shit. Like I always talk about like how smart they are and like how they learn you as much as you learn them. So like, especially with your first scrub, the people who are like, oh, I'm just gonna put him in a CB70 tub, they're gonna be like, oh, this is awful. The thing hates me. I hate cleaning it. It pisses all over the fucking place. And it's like, yeah, what did you expect? You're not really treating that animal with respect. You're not really looking into what that animal is all about.
Yeah.
But almost all the people I know who have like listened to me talk about them and they're like, I did a bunch of research. I waited 6 months. I did, looked at who was breeding them and which one I wanted to get and blah, 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 blah. All those people, I see them post in the scrub group and they're like, I've had this thing for a month and this is the coolest snake I've ever kept in my life. My mind is blown because of like, it's interesting to watch. It sits out in the open during the daytime. When I come in the room, it's always coming to the edge of the enclosure to check out what's going on.
Yeah.
They're so in tune with everything that's going on around them. And when people look at it like that, it's completely different. And some people are not ready for that. Like, and I don't fault them for that. Like, we're all at different points in our keeping journey, our existence with reptiles. Everybody's at a different point. And for some people, it's like, oh, I got one. It really was not my thing. I got rid of it. Okay, that's fine. I'd rather you get rid of it than try and keep it because you have some sort of like, oh, well, I need to have something rare because it's rare. It's like, no, dude, if you don't like it or if it's not what you expected, send it to somebody who is going to enjoy it and who will really get the appreciation out of it. But the majority of the people who I see that join the group and post about getting their first scrub python, they're like, why am I keeping anything else? These things are so freaking cool. They're just amazing. And I learn something new about it every single time that I interact with it. And that shit is what really gets to me, because that's kind of how I feel about them, as I'm going from my first one and producing them and raising them and this, that, and the other thing. You learn so much about each individual snake and then the species as a whole that like there's always something interesting and changing about them. So the people who are like interested in getting them, they're not, at least for the ones that I've had message me, they're never like, oh, well, I want to get like a couple pairs of these and a couple pairs of those. And I want to try and breed them and do this, that, and the other thing. A lot of
Yeah.
people who message me, people who are like, I have heard you talk about them. I've seen some videos of them. They look really cool. What's your opinion? Like, what do you think? And I'll give them my straight opinion. I always tell people they're not for everybody. I don't think that everyone can get a scrub python. Just because you have a big collection of snakes does not mean that you should just get a scrub python, just have another one in your collection, like just another snake in your collection. I think that the people who keep scrub pythons, I would think that they should really want a scrub python and really want to see all that snake has to offer, because throwing them in a tub is doing them a disservice. It's doing you a disservice as far as like learning the animal and what kind of experience you're going to have with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it is always cool to see people have that mindset towards it, and that's that's going to build longevity as well. It's also a great time for there to be more captive bred scrubs available than wild caught scrub pythons as they become more popular and more people want to get into them. Especially like I always say that I think scrub pythons are a great complement to an already diverse collection.
Yes,
because they just add so many dynamics that other species can't really add. And like for instance, a lot of people are getting into green tree pythons now that maybe were into ball pythons, and I'm like, put a pair of scrub pythons in that room with your green tree pythons. All the care parameters are the exact same. You don't have to change anything, but you get a snake that acts completely differently within the same circumstances as your green tree pythons, and you don't need to compromise the rest of the room for them. And I have a few people who are green tree people who have gotten scrubs from me, and it's just like wow, like I'm so glad I did this. It elevates what keeping these snakes ends up all being about. So yeah, I think they're a great addition to an already diverse collection. But yeah, I mean, if scrub pythons were picking up steam the way they are 7-8 years ago, when it was only wild caughts, and especially from questionable individuals, that there might be a little bit of a a peak and then a crash, where I think that, considering if you're a person who wants to get into scrub pythons and you have 5 to 10 different people on Morph Market with captive bred animals that they've produced, who are most of them probably willing to take the time with you to give you the right introduction, can't get better than that. And then there's groups that are supportive and really positive, particularly the Somalia group. The other group maybe not quite so much. But yeah, I don't know, the way the community is changing. I think it's a really good place that we're all in for anyone who wants to be a new scrub python keeper to have a good experience.
Absolutely. It's been really interesting to me to just see those people with their experience and the people who share. I really like that, because it's been weird, because I'm sitting in the Somalia group and I see somebody who's like, oh, I heard Rob talking about these on Reptile Talk, and I'm like, you're listening to me yabber about freaking scrub pythons, and then you went out and got one. Oh, geez. And they're like, I did like 6 months of research before I ended up getting it, and it's even cooler than how it was described. And I'm like, thank freaking goodness I didn't oversell it, because like for me it's hard for me to think that I would oversell them, because I just think that they're the coolest freaking snakes. But like, I can see how people might be disappointed.
It's hard not to when you are as passionate about them as like the two of us are. Get us rambling on it for a while, and anyone's going to be like, hey, this seems freaking awesome. I mean, like Alex, you had a kind of a unique opportunity as like a keeper of when you were with me for that summer. You'd worked with a ton of different species, and then all of a sudden you're kind of thrown in the deep end with all of these scrub pythons that we were taking care of.
I mean, well, not even, I think before when you head out of town, I collection sit for you. Like, honestly, that's the joy that I've had, is seeing you produce scrub. Like, I have a photo of the male Wamina that sired your clutch, or Jayapura now.
Yeah.
Of him when he was a baby in the 28 quart sea serpents rack raising up. Like, from 6 years, actually that would have been 8 years ago. It's like I helped raise that boy, so I feel like I'm I was still sort of tangled in the mix, but I mean, yeah, it was cool, like seeing,
Yeah.
the animals that, for lack of a better term, I had a chance to pet sit, now producing and supplying people with their dream snakes, and hearing you two going on and off about the importance of these specimens of all these different Somalia species and localities being captive bred. Like, people can enjoy a piece of that because of that. I mean, one, it puts into perspective, as you both just said, to the work that goes into it. Those snakes were little 6 years ago. It took you 6+ years for some of these animals to get to the point where now you're reproducing them. Yeah, there he is in Indiana. Yeah, I love that snake, dude. The orange on that snake is just gorgeous. I know you didn't like the patternless stuff, Rob. I have to say, out of all of the scrubs I worked with that Steven kept, for me, it was the Waminas. I don't know, I just like patternless snakes sometimes. I just think they look dope. So for me, definitely the patternless Southerns. And then as far as the handleability, I mean, I liked that your Moluccan specifically, I could reach in and just pull them out. They seemed like the gentle giants. Like I said, I feel like if I'm going to cave in, it's got to be one of those three. But I just don't have the position to own, a constrictor like that at the time being, or right now at least. But either way, like I said, they're phenomenal snakes. And I think it's awesome. I'm in that Somalia group. I'm not on Facebook as much as I used to, but I think just because of how it's one of the handful of groups that I choose to remain in, whenever I check once a week, those pop up. And yeah, just seeing people getting excited to have it almost reminds me of like the forum days where people were just sharing information and experiences.
Yeah.
They weren't being judged. They weren't being bullied because, the Facebook forum admin say was the head honcho, in my opinion, is the only thing that matters. Like, it's just a bunch of cool people sharing their experiences with snakes, whether they're keeping them as a pet or sharing experiences breeding them, like what both of you do. And then me, looking from the outside, is just somebody who has taken an interest in wanting to understand this group of snakes, Somalia. I just think it's fascinating that I can do that. Even cooler, to be sitting in and listening to you two go back and forth on it, because I think, the topics and aspects that you're breaking down on this can apply to so many other species, and it's just important that people sort of revert back to that forum-based discussion and just general appreciation of why species X is incredible, which in this case are the scrub pythons. And I'm sure there are, podcasts and other social media platforms are starting to sort of shift to that, where it's really about collaboration and information sharing as opposed to sort of who can get the most likes. I think people are starting to get tired of that bullshit, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I think you're right. So like, obviously before you were working with me and doing the scrub stuff, you'd, experienced plenty of pythons, Liasis, the Burms and Indians that we used to work with at the Discovery Center. I mean, what were some of the behavioral things that seemed to be like the most significant for you, going from other pythons and then experiencing scrubs?
I mean, for me, in my opinion, I feel like Somalia working with, they are much more colubrid-esque. The way they sit on a hook, like you said, people say, oh, as far as a python, the way they watch you and observe you and read you, to me, that's like working with any of the, Drymarchon, Hydrodynasties, currently at the facility I curate, like we have both of those species and they watch you. And then, you work with a python, for like, we've got Maclots at this facility too. I love Liasis. That'll probably be that's one of my top tier python groups, genus that I'd have to love. But even then, it's like they still act kind of like a traditional python, very predictable when they're going to strike when they're young, a little bit more sedentary. And I don't know why Somalia are so different. There's got to be something with like a common ancestor where they broke off compared to Python, Malaya Python, and Liasis, and then, like Leia Python and Bothrochilus and some of the obscure Indonesian stuff. But I just, again, working with your stuff, it felt like I was working with a big colubrid, using a hook, having to really pay attention to the body language of that snake, which, I mean, I feel like if you're working with any snake, you got to pay attention to the body language. But even then, like paying attention to the body language of, say, a big retic just because it's big. But, it doesn't matter if, a scrub python 6 feet or 8 feet. The the way they behave, the fact that they can reach further with a strike if they were to do so. I mean, it's a different kind of mindset, which really makes me think of working with some of those colubrids that are fast and powerful. Like I said, you know, an 8-foot Hydrodynastes gigas, you know, that's fast and they'll turn on you in an instant. And it almost seems like scrub pythons, again, just in my experience working with them, I haven't kept them personally, but it's sort of more of that vibe of keeping, of really paying attention to your animal, reading its body language, appreciating what it can do, and working with it for what it does when it's out of the enclosure. And that's what I also just think, you know, makes working with them rewarding. But I mean, that can be said for anything, you know, sort of finding that mutual respect and sort of balance of, you know, what the keeper and what the kept have for each other. You want to put it that way. And I think, you know, Somali are sort of like the pinnacle in that case of like the pythons that would exhibit those behaviors to allow that, as opposed to, like I said, say something that's more sedentary, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
That's the way I word it. I suck at wording things sometimes. I'm sorry.
You're good. That's we have plenty of time. Yeah, I think a lot of people will sometimes call scrub pythons unpredictable, especially like new keepers who might have wild caught animals. I think they're not unpredictable. I think there's a different set of parameters you need to learn with them, different set of behaviors. Once you understand how they act and live, then they're very predictable. They're just not predictable if you want to compare them to a savu python or a carpet python or something like that. You know, Rob, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I consider all of mine very predictable. There's very situations that would like catch me by surprise with any of my scrubs personally. But I think that part of that is how long I've known, you know, most of my snakes, you know, I've known them for years, and it's like, you know, over that amount of time, you learn each individual one. But like, they give you so many different signs of what the hell's going on, you know, the majority of the time. The thing with the scrubs is like, so you do have to pay attention to them. So like if you're not paying attention to them, shit can come out of left field because you're holding it and all of a sudden it turns its head down and, you know, you missed that cue.
Right.
And it just bit you and you're like, it just bit me out of nowhere. It's like, no, you know, something made it nervous. You moved the wrong way. You touched it on the top of the back or, you know, this, that, or the other thing. And it very well could have given you a bunch of signs, but if you don't know how to read the signs, it's like, yeah, of course it came out of nowhere, especially where people are comparing it to like a retic or, you know, some of these other species. Cause like a retic, when it's pissed off, it's going to like cock back at you. It's going to hiss, you know, you might get a little tail wag, something, but like, you know, scrub pythons, a lot of times they're anchored either on the hook or on your arm or, you know, someplace. So they're, you know, you're not probably going to get much of a tail wag out of them unless they're like really scared. Like this,
really, man.
Here, when she's scared, like when she starts moving, she's like immediately flapping her tail all over the place. And and it's like, you know, in my opinion, I think that people do compare it to the other species of snakes, and they're so different than all of the other snakes that you're going to work with that you have to learn them specifically, as opposed to comparing them to a berm or an afrock or a retic or any of the other bigger anacondas. And it's like, anacondas are their own thing too. Like anacondas are the ones where those are actually unpredictable. I think they're personally unpredictable because
I agree.
I'm sitting there watching them. They're not doing anything. And all of a sudden it's just, they turn their head down and jab you. It's out of freaking no. They're not even tense. You can feel that their body is intense. And then they're on like holding on to you.
I mean, anacondas are like freaking aliens. It's like, you know, who put these snakes here? Why do they act and live the way they do? I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. One thing with scrubs that I feel like people miss sometimes, you know, especially I think it can cause some of the bites that occur while handling. If a scrub doesn't have a tail anchor, I don't care how, like, that snake is not comfortable.
Yeah.
So if you're handling your scrub python and it doesn't have a tail anchor on you, like, and you know, it's tense and it's moving weird. It's like, that animal's not thrilled right now. So like, especially and then if you grab it, instant bite. Even
that's the quickest way to get them to turn around on you.
Yeah, you know, if it's not anchored, it doesn't feel comfortable, and then it gets grabbed, it's like it's going to happen most of the time. But like little things like that, like They don't like being touched on their back. They don't like being tapped on top of their head. They don't like the back of their body being above the front of their body. They're always going to try to turn back around at you, and especially if they're not feeling it right at that moment, then that's when they come back and they shoot right up at your face. But if you switch your hand position and then the snake goes up, it immediately
continues going up over you.
Yeah. So, I mean, little things like that don't necessarily apply with some other pythons, or maybe not to the extreme degree. A video that needs to happen eventually is just like some general little scrub python handling things that I feel like would help a lot of people just kind of get an understanding. Because, I mean, as both of us have gone through, the ringer of trying to figure this out on our own, like, man, over time, something clicks and you're like, oh, that actually makes sense to me now that this little thing that I did when the snake did this causes a reaction where it calms down, or, whatever it may be. It's just, they're complex, but they're also confident. So you really can't overpower them. You can't outwit them, really. It's like they're going to stand their ground no matter what, but that's not their default state. Their default state is to, basically feed off of how you're acting and your energy. And then if that's negative, then they're going to react in kind. But if that's not, then typically that's not how, they're going to react positively.
Yeah. Big shout to the Ipers in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
They're out there. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Always awesome when they show up. It's it's a pretty cool feeling, especially, being someone who grew up in this, looking at the people like that out in Australia. It's cool. It's cool that kind of shit like that comes full circle. Lisa, I'm not sure if this would be offensive or not. I've actually never owned an Amazon tree boa, so I'm not one to
I'm offended because Amazons have got 2 brain cells and they're both fighting for 3rd place. They're not the smartest snakes on the planet. They're just like heat-seeking missiles, and like, I don't know. I've not seen scrubs do things like Amazons, because like I was at a friend's house, and this is like 15 years ago, but I was at a friend's house and he had a bunch of Amazon tree boas, and he had like one of those lights that kind of hangs down in the middle of the room. And so after we're hanging out in there for a while, the light bulb gets hot, and every Amazon tree boa that he opened up, they struck right at the light because it's the hottest thing in the room. They could not figure out that like you're the thing that's in there. It's just whatever's hot, that's what they're going after. And scrubs don't do that. They don't do that stuff. It's like, I've got one scrub that'll strike the glass, but every single other scrub, even if they're annoyed, they'll like go right up to it, but they don't like try to go through it like a retic does, or a berm. Like you see a retic and it's like, oh, you thawed out a rat. They're trying to eat the side of the enclosure and the glass and like the snake hook. They're just like, I need to bite something. I don't care what it is. But I've not had scrubs do that. Like I've had retics bite and wrap snake hooks before, and they're like, I got it. I got the thing. And they're shaking and quivering because they're so excited with all this great food that they've got. Scrubs don't do that stuff. Even when they're upset, even when there's food in they'll go like right up to things, but they're like, no, that's you're not gonna fool me. Retics, their brain shuts off as soon as there's like food in any smell of food in the area. So it's like, I'm not offended that you said that Amazons are like scrubs, because like when you're holding them, they both hold on to you the same way. That's fine, but I don't think that they act the same.
What are your thoughts on green tree pythons, Rob?
Oh my god! Second most overrated snake in the hobby besides Bolin's python. Oh, I'm gonna upset some people. That's gonna get clipped.
Man, just take some of the heat off of me. I'm all for it.
Just want to say from here on out, I'm not affiliated with the opinions of these co-hosts. So,
yeah, all opinions expressed tonight are solely of mine, not of Reptile Talk or any of the other places that I've worked for before. They're solely mine. If you have hate mail, you can address it to me directly in my Instagram DMs. It's robiscreepingitreal. I will fight you on this. Bolin's pythons are overrated.
All right. Well, on that note, we're about at the commercial break.
Time for a commercial break. I wanted to time out, guys.
Lisa, what have you done?
Stay right here, everybody. We'll be back on the other side with more Bolin's hate.
For the #1 PVC enclosures in the reptile game, no better place to visit than Focus Cube Habitats. Excited for today's sponsor, Focus Cube Habitats, #1 enclosures in the reptile game by far. Everything you see behind me are 3x2x2 PVC design enclosures by Steven and Ashley over at Focus Cube Habitats. They're based out of Texas. If you head over to their website, you can select from over 30 plus different enclosure designs that they've done. Two of the hardest working people in the reptile hobby today, and I'm so excited to add more Focus Cube enclosures. So much again, Steven and Ashley, I appreciate the 5+ years of partnerships that we've had together. Looking forward to growing more. Head over to focuscubehabitats.com, head over to their YouTube channel, subscribe, and check them out on Instagram. Thank you so much, Focus Cube Habitat. When you think about building a good community and being a leader of that community, nobody comes to mind better than Mark Hager over at Texas CHONDROS. That's right. Make sure you head over to TX CHONDROS on Instagram and also head over to Mark's website. See what he has available green tree python wise, and be ready for quite the 2025 green tree python breeding season out of Mark Hager. He's a veteran in the green tree python game, one of the best and nicest breeders in the green tree python game. He's been putting on the whole state of Texas for as long as I've known him. So if you want to see all the amazing other chondro keepers out of the state of Texas, another good reason to go follow Mark Hager over at TX CHONDROS on Instagram. And again, head over to his website, texaschondros.com. You can find all the links in the description below. Thank you so much, Mark Hager, for supporting the trap. Chee! Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Diversity when it comes to a reptile diet, I feel like, is so important. So this is why I'm proud to announce today's sponsor, Blake Exotic Feeders over in Florida.
What is up, everybody? Blake here, the owner of Blake's Exotic Feeders. We have all quail available at all times, produced here at my ranch from button day old, from Coturnic day old, all the way to extra large Coturnic quail. If you guys have any questions, DM on Instagram. Appreciate the support, you guys. Make sure you guys hit me up. We have all the quail like I mentioned, and everything is shipped right here from my house.
If you want the #1 quail sent to your doorstep and more importantly fed to your reptile, no better company than to go to than Blake Exotic Feeders. #1 quality in quail, hands down, and I gotta tell you, my reptiles love it just as much. It'll give me a peace of mind to know that these quail are grown on his property and it's not bought third party. Head over to his website, Blake Exotic Animal Ranch, to place your order, or you could just hit him up directly on Instagram. Let him know that the trap sent you and he'll take extra good care of you. Thank you so much, Blake, for supporting the trap, and also thank you so much for sending me top quality homegrown quail for my animals. One of the things I love about being a part of the reptile industry is all the learning, okay? Learning can be fun, and I can prove that to you. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, it's Gary Scavino over at gs.reptiles. I highly recommend you head over to his YouTube channel, follow all this man's content when it comes to learning about rare species of snakes you could be keeping in the hobby, and also just finding out how easy a lot of these rare species of snakes are to keep in general. So thank you so much, Gary Scavino of GS Reptiles. Again, head over to his YouTube channel. Also head over to his Instagram to be on top of all of his current work and be ready for a big year over at GS Reptiles. Thank you so much, Gary, for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Chee!
And we're back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back from the
I've been reprimanded.
Much needed break.
Well, yeah, before we get into another scrub related topic, I want to go back, Alex, some of these pictures that you sent me of these water dragons before we get too far out. So kind of,
Yeah.
that's what we are looking at here.
So yeah, that when you're talking about line breeding, so I'll say this just because I too listen to the Trap Talk Reptile Network. For any of the audio listeners, feel free to check out the video of this recording right at the 1 hour, 3 minute mark. But what we're looking at here, this is a 2019 captive bred female Chinese water dragon I produced. And this was just an example of one of the ones that had some really nice striping. I believe I sent you another photo of this animal literally the day it hatched. And what I was looking at, which made it stand out immediately, is how clean the striping is on that animal. And that was the only one of the clutch that looked like that. So whether it was genetic or just an abnormality, I just remember as soon as that one hatched, I had to take a photo and told myself that one had to be kept tabs on as far as how it developed. And unfortunately, just at the time, I did sell it, and that's why I had the updated photos of it. The buyer kept me in the loop. But I also sent you a photo of that as a yearling.
Damn.
And you can see in this photo, she's got sort of this the
Jeez.
washed out blue color, which again, just at the time we didn't have the knowledge, or at least I didn't have the knowledge as far as how to properly gut load feeder bugs for these lizards and how to supplement carotenoids and beta carotene appropriately. But you can see even with her blue washed out background, how vivid and clean those stripes are. And they even go into like the first like base of her tail, almost like a blue splotching. So I do have a sibling to that one that does not at all look as good as her. But in the event that it's genetic, or maybe it's just a random polymorphic trait, perhaps it'll pop up when I breed the clutch mate to that one. So I do have, like I said, it's the female I'm currently working with is from the same pairing that produced the animal you're seeing on screen here, but it was a 2020 baby, and so she's hopefully going to be going into the breeding rotation this year if all
Cool.
works out. But
That's
pretty
awesome.
remarkable. So that's, as far as I can be concerned, the like, how do you want me to word it? The as close as you could get to the tiger striping quote unquote morph or line breed that Sapphire Dragon was doing. So yeah, I am that's just sort of my thought in regards to those, and hopefully it just gives people an idea of some of the potential that water dragons can have in the hobby. I feel bad that I haven't really shared some of this stuff publicly. Part of it, I won't lie, is just because I was scared to like to post photos of other people's animals. But like I said, these images that I sent to Steven to show on screen, I do not own that lizard anymore. That was from a customer, but hopefully it gives people an idea of some of the potential morphological traits that I could be working with in the future, now that I'm actually focusing on getting the breeding of this species in full swing, since I'm not dealing with college and all that other jazz. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, man, if an animal like that is kind of like an aberrancy popping out of a normal clutch, I can only imagine the potential within the species being really, really high. If this is a random occurrence, what's 2 generations even of selective breeding?
Exactly. The biggest thing that I want to prioritize first, though, and I was actually talking to Heather Moy of Fairy Tale Dragons and Ron St. Pierre, because they do a lot of work with bearded dragons, which we can't get any more bearded dragon bloodlines in the States. We sort of hinted at this earlier. I'm going to try and initially select for traits that are favoring just an overall healthy animal, healthy development, really eager food drive. So that way we can ensure that as close as I can get, I mean, at the end of the day, everything's artificial in captivity, but the idea is that we're not going to be breeding these things to the point where we see it with bearded dragons and some of the other mass-produced species where there's, bug eyes and almost like short, compressed-looking faces, and unfortunately just animals that won't have a good quality of life. So it's sort of that fine line of wanting to create a really exceptional animal, like the female you see on screen here. You can see her face is nice and long. Just honestly a beautiful animal, and I'm really sad that I ended up selling it, especially since it's on the photo the day she hatched. But we'll see what happens with that, So that's that's the line bred stuff. And then I think it's funny, I guess, on the topic of morphs, Steven, I don't know if I've ever talked about this publicly other than, or at least shared anything publicly. I sent it to you in the email or another email. Yeah. You sent me that photo from Pomona in 2019. So again, at the hour 8-minute mark for our audio listeners wanting to check this out on the video, that is what I believe is the only ever known T-positive albino Chinese water dragon in existence. And Steven sent me that exact photo from Pomona, and the sad story about that is that the guy who had it, from what I understand, he was parading it around at that show, showing it off. And if you want, I sent you another photo of that exact animal. And I mean, that's like, so again, at the hour 9-minute mark here for our audio listeners, that like you can see the eye is just, there's a little bit of melanin in there, but it is washed out yellow. I am so sad that this animal is no longer with us. But from what you can see in the background, I reached out to the guy that had it. I offered him what money I could. I want to say it was like $900 or something for it, which with how big it is compared to his thumb, I mean, that's probably like a 3-week-old, popped out at a farm or just freshly because it popped out. So, I mean, that's as sensitive as it gets as far as a wild caught imported specimen of a Chinese water dragon. But yeah, I offered him money and it was the same thing. The guy suddenly wanted to become a breeder, get rich. You can see in the background, he kept it like there is no shade UV gradient, which for lizards, which do require UV lighting, the fact that you're just overexposing it to UV radiation, that's a death trap. And in my honest opinion, I would have honestly just not even used UV on this and just tried to supplement low consistent levels of vitamin D3 to start. And I remember I messaged the person 3 months later and he told me it died, which really sucks because again, tyrosine positive animals technically have a little bit of melanin. So in theory, it wouldn't be like, the albino iguanas and stuff where people report eye issues with them. Like that would have been arguably kind of like, the T positive water monitors, right? Where they seem to get by just fine. And truly then it would have been a golden dragon. But again, that was 6 years ago. And that still haunts me. I'm not going to lie. I think about that lizard more often than I probably should. And it's how it goes,
No, it is.
But,
how it goes.
Oh, yeah.
That's
probably
That thing is so freaking cool. I've never seen that picture before. Oh my god.
Dude, I try not to be a gatekeeper, but I just, it was one of those things where I was really hoping I could have gotten it. And I remember I had a buddy of mine who said he kept getting like texts from people saying that they had albino water dragons, and he said nobody ever sent him photos. And I was just talking with a person one day, and he brought it up. I was like, oh, yeah, here's one from 3 years ago. He's like, you have photos? I was like, I've got multiple photos. My buddy was there at this show.
Damn.
Yeah, and they didn't keep it. So, yeah, that's probably the first time I think I've ever publicly talked about and shared the photo proofs of the albino water dragon on a podcast. So there's your Trap Talk Reptile Network limited edition special for everybody who's tuning in live and anybody who will be re-listening to the episode. So yeah,
That thing is cool as hell, man.
Dude, I was freaking out. I mean, what I would have given, I probably could have paid for all of my college if I had produced those. Not that it's about money here. I'm just like, I mean, that would have been a cool morph to work into, especially because back then in 2019, the species hadn't gone CITES Appendix 2. So there would have been a plethora of imports just to use for outcrossing and strengthening that, assuming it would have been a simple recessive gene. Make hets, make pos hets, don't breed back to back to get the visual right away. We saw that happen with numerous different snake projects. I think of like lavender false water cobras, how the visual homozygous recessive of the lavender false water cobras are stunted. They have big eyes and they never get past like 4.5 feet because of how people tried to instantly produce them. Hopefully, people are actually doing it the proper way, because from what I understand, the het lavender, or like the heterozygous recessive lavender of the Hydra dynasties guy, I guess, is like visual. They're much lighter, which would make sense to some, in my opinion, because from what I understand, how lavender works in hognose snakes and corn snakes, it's a scale mutation. So if the heterozygous recessive form is lighter, it's probably a sign that it's carrying that gene. Because when people have bred lavender corn snakes and such, they're not lavender because it's the way the scales are, reflecting that light or something. I think it's the same phenomenon of how like a blue jay bird, for all of our North American listeners, you've probably seen a blue jay, but they're not technically blue. It's the way the light reflects off their feathers and the keratin. But rant aside, yeah, what I would give for another water dragon like that to pop up, but we're not going to be seeing any anytime soon. Although who knows? Now that pretty much the only way to have them produced is through captive breeding, maybe one's going to pop up.
Yeah,
Sure as hell hope it's in my collection.
Well, speaking of individuals that will probably never see pop up again.
Yes, bro. That is the exact picture that I was thinking of.
Yep. Yeah. Jeez, man. What a
Could
snake.
you imagine? Oh my god! Oh, for the audio listeners, this is like a bazillion-year-old picture of this. It's like an albino calico scrub. It's a predominantly yellow scrub.
Here comes
And,
Scott to flex on all of us all at once while we oogle at the low res picture. He's like, "Oh yeah, I saw that snake in person."
Yeah, and it's got like white, black speckles, like cookies and cream speckles all over it. Man, that snake is fun. There's another picture of it too. I'm pretty sure there's one other picture that shows like a side profile of it.
I think you're right.
But oh man, that's a picture I remember, and that thing is that would turn the scrub world upside down if that thing popped up now.
I agree. Yeah. Another thing that killed me, the recent episode that MJ did with Eugene Bissett and Vin Russo. I mean, Eugene said it in just the most like passive way possible, that he said that he had a pair of King Horneye for a while back years ago. And I was just like, I just kind of started crying. I'm like, no, they were here. Oh God. So, oh man. Yeah, some of these what ifs. Yeah, that snake is spectacular. But I think it's time to get into a topic. I think we're at that part of the show where it might be time, Rob. You know what time I'm referring to?
Probably.
Okay.
So, as scrub pythons become more popular, as the markets grow and change, as happens with a lot of different species, there comes an impulse in some. Let's see what happens when I put this one to this one. Let's see what happens if these animals breed with these animals. What will they look like? And it's a source of controversy. There's people who are on the pro side, people who are on the anti side, people who are kind of floating around in the middle like me. But yeah, I'll throw this to you to kind of get the ball rolling, Rob. What say you on the idea of, let's either call them locality crossed or hybrid scrub pythons?
They are hybrids. They are like, even if there isn't a scientific paper that's separating them, they are different species.
You can still look. You can make a locality cross scrub python, and you could breed like a really nice Highland animal to a really lowland like Savannah phase Maruki, and that's a local. I'm just saying. Yeah, I know what
you could make an argument. I'm sure, but if you. I'm sure that people could put a chimpanzee with a bonobo or with a gorilla and make the argument that they're close enough. It's not the same. It's not. It's not. And I personally detest those things a lot, and I don't like it. People are going to do with their own animals what they decide to do with their own animals, and it's their collection. It's not mine. But personally, I strongly dislike this. Scrubs are already something that's so difficult to breed. With, like we were talking about earlier, southern animals are much more tractable, easy to produce. So you breed, you could put I don't want to say any male, but you could put just about any male to a female southern and maybe get eggs out of them. Like the people who do the Boland's pythons hybrids, they bred them to carpet pythons. What did they do? They didn't breed it to a female Boland's. They put a male Boland's with a female carpet python, and female carpet pythons throw eggs no matter what, right? So like, oh, cool. Yeah, we made the hybrids because we used the female it's really easy to produce with, and we put a male that was the harder species to do. And I personally just detest those things. I would feed them to king cobras, but that's not my collection, so that's not what I'm going to do with my stuff. But there are people who are doing those things, and that's on them. These snakes are completely different species. There are, like you're saying, there are things that you could make the argument that it's okay, it's local or whatever. But Barnecks and Southerns, Clastolepis and Tracy, come on, they're not the same species. And it bothers me even that like Waminas or the Jaipuras, the Southerns and the Barnecks are all and Highlands, I guess technically, are all considered the same species. Like, that is absurdity. There's no, that's just not the truth. It's not the truth. Just because there hasn't been a scientific paper written and dropped about it. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
So like, it's I think that it does a disservice to scrub pythons as a whole, because those animals are going to end up, as soon as they leave your hands, they're not under your control anymore. So
Sure.
unless you're spaying or neutering them and then sending them out, okay, like if you do that, cool, because there's not any possibility of people breeding them into other things. People already have such a hard time distinguishing between different snakes. Like it was an issue with bloods and short tails for a while, where people were like, oh well, like they're the same species, and it's like, okay, these things evolved on Borneo, these ones evolved on Sumatra, and you're going to say that they're the same species? They're like, well, they're the same species because back in the day they were considered subspecies. And it's like, okay, but use two of your brain cells and put them together. They're not the same species. They have different scalation. They have different reproductive styles. Blood pythons lay larger eggs of smaller clutches. Short-tail pythons lay larger clutches of smaller eggs. These are not the same animal. And if you want to play dumb and play devil's advocate, sure, you can do that. Okay, cool. But don't pretend like you're like making some sort of valid argument, because it's just not the case. And like I was saying, as soon as they leave your collection, they're you have no control over what happens to them. And like I know that there was a concerted effort to make them like price not quite the same as the pure scrub pythons. But then I've seen another one that was reposted for sale at a much higher price because it's designer, and it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like as soon as it leaves your collection, it's not your call anymore.
And that's a good example as to what you mean by that. I've like I said, I've definitely fallen more near the center on this debate personally, and I've said this on here before. I don't have any crosses in my collection, and I don't plan on making any. And for just the pure fact alone that I don't have enough space to do all the pure projects that I want to do to begin with, so I don't want to allocate space for that. Pure and simple. I've often wonder what a barneck to a Moluccan would look like. Just
a jungle carpet python. It would be black and yellow like a jungle carpet, just a really big one.
It would probably be pretty cool looking, but that's just not something that I feel the need to do. But yeah, I mean, like, I think Alexandra approaches the project about as well as anybody could as far as how she can do it. But then, perfect example, there's like the guy who has one on Morph Market, reselling it, labeling it a designer. Yeah. She's not labeling it a designer. That's not her marketing. That's not how she's pushing the animals out.
She did market them as designers.
Oh, not that I've seen. So
in the
I guess.
Description.
Oh, okay. Well, no, never mind then. But, but yeah, someone who's new to scrub pythons could see that, and if anything else, just be confused.
Yeah.
Like and then also what does a designer mean? Like define designer. Because I feel like the only thing that we can really compare that to in any sort of practical use is a green tree python. But I would argue, and I hope he doesn't hear this, but like the really nice high white Aru green trees that Ryan Young is producing, you could make a claim that that's a designer animal. He's specifically line breeding for this sought after trait that is going to be emphasizing the best possible look within this locality type of snake. I mean, shoot, like if the first time I get to produce F2 barnecks, there's no, I mean, any sort of locality data that you might even want to pretend existed to begin with is totally gone on those snakes. They're not a hybrid. They're a pure barneck scrub python, but who's to say you wouldn't call that a designer?
Yeah,
sure,
the thing is, like,
representative of a wild animal.
Yeah, that's like part of it, right? Is like we are selectively breeding for traits that we like, so it's now being designed by us, right? Yeah. But like colloquially in the hobby, designer, when it comes to at least green tree python's the next closest thing that people are breeding and using the term designer for is hybrids. They're breeding hybrids, and so that's when people are referring to things as designer, like. That is what they mean. It's so that they don't have to say that, oh, this is a hybrid animal, because hybridization has a lot of like stigma towards it in the hobby with certain people, and so they've come up with this nice term. It's a designer. It's even when it comes to that, right, we call a lot of things like, oh, this is a sarong green tree python, when it's like, oh, they're probably actually not found specifically in sarong. They're found in surrounding areas. So like,
Yeah.
how specific do we want to get on it? Are they collected in the same exact, 5 square mile area? Maybe they're not. Maybe they're collected on, 20 miles away from each other, but they went to
Yeah.
that same export area. And so it's tough. I know that there is a different line in there, and
Yeah. I mean,
the
we're drawing this like hypothetical line in the sand of acceptable and not acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think as we've discussed before, the issue isn't necessarily the animals existing, it's what could happen in the future with these animals.
Mhm.
I don't know, me personally, and this is based on not a whole lot because we haven't seen this play out in real time. I can't imagine, let's take a bar neck scrub python, for instance. I can't imagine making a bar neck nicer than a bar neck with something that's not a bar neck. Like, you put any other influence into that snake, I just don't see how it looks better than what you can make just with a bar neck.
My thing is that, like, some of those hybrids, as I've seen people posting ones that they've gotten, they look really similar to heavily patterned bar necks that I've seen. And I could see somebody getting one and being like, oh, I don't know, I got this bar neck. It's like, it's just like a more heavily patterned one. So I'm just going to breed it back to the bar necks. And, there's a higher threshold for that where, like, of course, they got to be decent at breeding snakes to be able to get that second clutch out of them, unless the hybrid is the female. And then you've got those southern, easier to breed genetics to it, and then maybe you'll be able to do it a little bit easier. But who's to say, And there's a lot of things that could be easily confused, especially to people who have gotten this hand, didn't get it directly from her. Maybe they got it from somebody else who got it from somebody else who,
sure.
the other thing. That's kind of the nature of the game, right? And there's not as many of the, just animals in general, especially like bigger snakes, where you sell it to somebody and it stays with them the whole rest of its life, right?
Sure.
How many of those do you see?
Right.
Usually they change hands at least once, and you hope you don't that doesn't happen, but the nature of the beast, the nature of the hobby, the nature of people getting, shit happens. Sometimes people lose their house and they got to get rid of all their snakes, and they didn't want to get rid of it, but then they got to do it. And it's like, I personally would prefer to mitigate for as much of that as possible. And like, when I think about the like hybrid thing, it's like there's so many different layers that kind of fall into it. At the end of the day, we're keeping snakes in boxes. My opinion doesn't matter. Like, just because I'm like, I fucking hate hybrids and I would prefer that people feed them to their king cobras or king snakes, that's my personal opinion. It has no bearing on what you do in your collection or what she does in her collection or what anyone else does with any of their other animals. I'm going to do what I like with my stuff, and I'm going to, breed, pure species as close as I can to produce the stuff that I think is nice, and she produced the stuff that she thinks is nice. And I think that people get really caught up in the, like, well, you can't say that, and it's like, I'm allowed to not like things. You can't tell me that I have to like the stuff that you produce. I don't really particularly like rubber boas, but I don't want people to stop producing them. You guys can breed your poop snakes all you want. I'm glad that you guys like them, and I'm sure that there's some appeal to them, but they're not for me, and that's okay, right? Like, I think that people get really caught up in, like, no, well, like, I like these, so why are you talking crap about it? It's like, I can just say that it's not for me. I don't like it, and I don't particularly like that you did it. And it's like, okay, whatever. I've never been shy about that. If anyone asks me about it, that has always been my opinion about all of that stuff.
How dare you?
How dare I? That's okay. It's just like, I don't know. I feel very strongly about it. I've always felt strongly about it because, like, in the blood and shorttail community, that was a thing for a while where people were like, well, they're just subspecies. It's just the same thing. It's like, they're not the same thing. Like, don't, you're just trying to start a fight right now, and it's
Yeah.
unnecessary when these things are so easily confused anyway. So the crosses, they look so much like barnecks, and so like on a couple of her posts, she just like posted, "Oh, this is a baby I produced," and I'm like, "Is that actually a hybrid or is it a barneck? Because it looks really similar to like heavily patterned barnecks." And she's like, "You always just like comment that on here," and I'm like, "Well, you didn't specify." And for people who might not know, maybe they should have some clarity when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, that's personally how I feel about it. And they at the end of the day, she said she's not going to do them anymore. I'm like, cool. Didn't really see the point to do it in the first place, but people are going to do what they're going to do.
I guess my next question in this line would be, do you think that as a community, we have the ability to properly, in scrub pythons in particular, properly police ourselves to where if somebody does eventually try to pass off 75% barneck, 25% southern as a barneck, that we would actually be able to properly mitigate a situation like that?
Who knows? Who knows? There's people who are like, I compare it again to the Bloods and Short Tails, and this is like not as great of a comparison because it is harder to breed scrubs. But there are people who like are crappy at taking pictures. They just like snakes, and so they just like buy some stuff, they raise it up, they breed it, and then they post a picture of the clutch online. You're like, what the hell is that? And then you're like, can I see pictures of the parents? And they post a picture from 20 feet away through a trash bag of two snakes. And you're like, I think those are different species, man. Can you get like a better picture? And then they post one like in a mirror where they're wearing a bathing suit. And you're like, what is going on right now? This is it. And it's like, at the end of the day, after some back and forth with them, you find out, okay, they did hybridize things and these are all hybrid animals. But you get people who are just like, I don't know, I just like puts a couple snakes together, and who knows? Because those, like I said, as soon as those snakes leave your hands, it's not under your control anymore, and they could pass hands here, all over there. And so, who knows? Do I think that I could probably pick out some 75%ers? Maybe. With the amount of variety that I get in pure barneck bred to barneck, who knows? Who knows? Maybe you do get some that look like really nice pure barnecks,
Yeah.
Who knows? But there's
you can't know. Yeah.
There's so few people who are breeding them right now. But again, this is another thing that plays into this. As you're getting into captive bred generations, they get easier to breed. So
yeah, sure.
Maybe you get people who are more successful breeding the hybrids than breeding the actual pure stuff. And then it's just like perpetuating. It's like, what do you do then?
Yeah, well,
you do see that with a ton of species.
Yeah,
I say now that you say, especially with captive bred stuff, I think it's always ironic. Like, not to compare oranges to pineapples here, like sailfin dragons, despite the Philippine species being one of like the rarest in the hobby, there are still more people breeding those annually, which is like 3 to 4 every year, producing Philippines. And yet with these dozens, if not hundreds, of the imported Indonesian specimens, there's like maybe 2 people last year that captive hatched them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, I guess I didn't even put that into perspective. Like, if people are unintentionally making hybrids of anything, the hybrid itself is technically the F1. So it's going
to be easier to reproduce than the wild caught stuff. So
yes,
the bar has been lowered for the people who are able to reproduce it, because breeding wild caught stuff is always going to be more difficult than breeding the imports. Definitely.
The one, not speaking on behalf of the scrub python hobby here. This is the lizard guessing. But one thing that maybe I can compare it to, I personally lean more towards colubrids. That's like some of my favorite snakes. And Rob, you'll definitely be able to relate to this. Corn snakes.
Yep.
Hunt Club Okeetees, right? Like, compare some of those. So like, my one friend's really into Okeetees. I know you love Okeetees. I want to keep Okeetees and breed Okeetees one day. He has a pair of animals that he bought from Kathy Love.
Hell yeah.
But how many, especially nowadays, like, you look at Loveline Okeetees, especially their founding stock, and you compare it to these extreme Abbott crosses. Even though those could be argued as pure locality Okeetees, those have been selected for in captivity the traits that exemplify the reds and the blacks and the oranges, which they don't look like how they, would in the wild. And from what I understand too, then people start mixing the lines to where now you go to a reptile show, some people just have generic Okeetees because some of those lines have been so muddy. People have done Miami Okeetee crosses, and then those maybe get bred to Okeetee. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know what I mean? So it's one of those where it's like, is it not out of the question? God, I hope I don't get murdered by some snake people say is that 20 years from now, there could just be a hobby scrub python.
There could be. Absolutely, there could be.
Yeah,
just get rid of them.
You're fired right now.
You're gone immediately, right away.
We're not having you back. You work at McDonald's now. Don't come back here. How dare you talk about scrub pythons that way? That'll never happen. And you'll never be back on this show.
I'm sorry.
Oh my god. Bro.
Why are you booing me? I'm right. But I mean, it's just something to think about. I mean, I see it with Sailfin dragons. People have done hybrids with those too. And they're typically pretty well documented, but it's the same thing as I have seen a handful of Hydrosaurus trying to be passed off as Philippines. And thankfully, there's quite a few morphological differences. I'm not sure how it works with Somalia. If, like, say on these crosses, like you could count the labial scales to see if it fits a textbook of a southern phenotype or a barneck. But granted, if those are taxonomically considered the same species right now under Amethystina, then the real question is, where was the holotype for Amethystina collected? And then
which one was that?
Yeah. So, with Sailfins, we have a rough idea. Oh, sorry.
No, keep going. Sorry.
I say, he's like with Sailfins, if I'm looking at a hybrid, I can see the in-between traits. Or, even there are hybrid zones in the wild where two species range overlaps, which, it's more of an integrate Sailfin, if you will. But typically, even then, the traits morphologically lean to one species or another. So maybe that might be another way to sort of, I guess, figure that out. If you have dare I say, a hobby barneck being sold, you're counting the scales or whatever, being able to compare it. I can already see. I'm going to try and call Steven tomorrow, and it's going to say, this user has blocked your number. But
straight to voicemail.
Yeah. Is this a sign that I can't walk into Tinley Park this weekend? Am I going to get, like, shanked?
Listen, you can come to Tinley, but if we both see you at Daytona, we're jumping your ass behind the hotel.
We're putting you on the slingshot ride and not strapping you in.
That's right.
They're gonna find me in the ocean with cement blocks on my feet.
Well, I think the issue with that on scrub pythons is I don't know. I don't have enough information on the scale morphology, but they're so variable animal to animal on scale morphology that I'm not sure that can truly be used as a way to depict one from the next. I don't know, Rob. What do you think? I think I would look more at physical features like head structure, than
head scalation on the top of the head.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like depict, figuring out a cross from a pure, I don't know if you could look at scalation and be like structure for sure, but I don't know that I think scrubs just have so much natural variability in their in their morphology that might be too tough. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to go back to a comment from before Trump decided to pop in. That Scott left. It's a good conversation. How policing the boa community, carpet green tree community kind of didn't work. What makes you think that scrubs have a chance? I think it's for one, it's not. It's a difficult, easier said than done kind of thing to address, but we have these examples to go off of how things went badly in the past. And like for instance, if you look at those three, with green trees and with carpet pythons, why did things go so far off the rails? Well, it's because these hybrids look so damn good. Boa hybrids are not popular.
For the most part, yeah.
I mean, what's a popular boa hybrid?
I can't even think of any.
The sunset hogs are really popular. The hypo hog islands, those are really popular.
Are they more popular than pure hogs though?
They're more commonly available than pure hogs, I'll tell you that.
I'm guilty of that. Previous job, I produced a handful of those.
Yep.
I'm definitely getting shanked at Daytona now. I can already see the look in Rob's eyes.
I'm just disappointed, that's all.
If within the entire boa constrictor complex, we can come up with one example, and then carpet pythons, you have the super high-end jungles, which are inevitably some percentage carpet or diamond, and then you have some of the stuff in Australia, like freaking Brettles, zebra, diamond, jungle jag, something like that.
Brettles crosses, bro.
Yeah, the albino inland. I mean, whether you like them or not, a lot of these carpet crosses are visually pleasing animals, and where with a boa constrictor, you just kind of you dilute whatever makes that animal naturally beautiful. And then another thing that we are not even really accounting for with the carpet pythons is that there's a lot of morphs going on in that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then I think that's what Lisa said is potentially a concern for sure. I mean, for instance, if it was 6-7 years ago and that ivory Jayapura popped up, when we're not even talking as much about different scrub localities and species and all that stuff, would that animal have even been keyed out to be a Jayapura?
No, dude, they would have just been like, breed it to whatever will produce eggs, throw it to it.
So I mean, and I think that's a genuine concern. But even Scott, your point about the retic morphs, some of these communities have kind of taken steps in the opposite direction. Like for instance, with the retics, some of the most popular retics are pure Philippine retics, Halmahera retics, ternate retics, stuff like that. Karampa retics, and with that said, a lot of the times with those, the goal is to put the morphs into it. But that's because that's how that community, that's the priority within the retic community, is how to make little morphs. But I don't know. And this might just be wishful thinking, I just don't see it going that way with the scrub python. Like, what would breeding that T positive Halmahera to another species do that breeding it to a Halmahera wouldn't do? Like, what could you possibly get out of that?
It would be easier because they could breed a male T positive Halmahera to a female southern. The female southern's gonna produce eggs. It's gonna, because we've cracked the code on producing eggs from female southern.
Sure.
So you breed a male T positive to it, and that's the thing. I think that the part that we're not missing, but the emphasis is on the morph, right? Morphs is what did a lot of this to the hybridization of a lot of these different species. They brought up the Jeremy Stone smuggling in the leucistic boa from freaking South America.
What do you mean that didn't happen?
Allegedly.
Totally above board.
He didn't serve jail time at all for it.
What do you mean? Yeah, well, but then the one thing that I would pose, let's say you bred that Halmahera to a southern, would those babies be genetically viable to reproduce?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
You sure?
They're close enough related. If they can do Boland's carpet python hybrids, if they can do Woma python, ball python hybrids.
No, that's not what I'm asking. Those offspring reproducing further. Not making the cross to begin with. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, Carpondros have problems, and both of those species are. I don't know. I mean, this, and again, might just be wishful thinking, but scrubs seem to be at a different level of sensitivity and whatnot than some other snakes do. So I don't know. Especially with something like a Halmahera, like, Barneck, Southern, Highland, Wamena, I think that's not even a consideration. But if you look at the geography of those snakes, just the physical makeup of those snakes. Oh my! You guys have to hear that, right? These damn bull snakes are being so loud. Oh my gosh! This is like their routine during the podcast now that it's breeding season. Is just make
He's
as
just
much
reminding you. He's just reminding you that he's got a wonderful modified epiglottis.
That's exactly what he says. I don't know. That's and again, could just completely be wishful thinking. But I wonder if there is just eventually some sort of genetic kind of end to what the possibility could be there. But then again, you see diamond crosses that have Papuan carpet in them, and so I don't know. Again, could just be wishful thinking, but
I'd be curious to see, like, you'd have to do a genetic, like, obviously aside from, heaven forbid, having to breed those two species together, I'd be curious to look at like the phylogenetics of it, because you're saying that with carpets, right? If I'm not, are carpets still considered subspecies, or were they elevated to full species status? Like, are still some of them like Spiloidea variegata, or is it
they're elevated to one species.
they're elevated to species now?
I believe.
Gotcha.
So.
Just the main reason why I ask is because, like you were saying, given how spread apart everything is with the islands, and again, probably comparing oranges to pineapples here. With Hydrosaurus, people have bred hybrids. They've made triple hybrids, and then they have bred the triple hybrids. But if you look at the phylogenetics of those that have been bred, the three species that have made the triple hybrids are the closest related from a genetic standpoint. And then what was interesting is there was a breeder that did attempt to breed Philippine sailfins to Moluccan sailfins. And those are the furthest apart, and they only had one viable baby hatch after multiple attempts of getting the adults to copulate. So that's what I'd be curious of is, like comparing, I don't know, let's say in this case with the hybrids that you've just talked about, Barnecks, Southerns, closely related, from, if I'm not mistaken, those are mainland Papua New Guinea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Those two species, the Barnecks and the Southerns?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, how genetically distinct is a Tannenbar from the mainland population? Or how farther, like, how long have those island populations had to evolve to where then you might not see the success with that hybridization? Hypothetically, of course, right? Like, again, just comparing the fact that with the known hybrids of Indonesian island endemic genus Hydrosaurus, the hybrids that have been made that have proved fertile were the three species that were the most closely related together based on genetic studies. And then the people that tried to breed the furthest related one had issues. And ironically, if you think about it too, the Moluccan sailfins are honestly more built like a water dragon, and they're the oldest lineages because that's where I'm guessing they split from their closer agamid cousin Hypsiluris. Again, comparing apples to, pineapples or whatever you want to say, but I'd like to think, given the, Somalia living, being another Indonesian species, there's got to be something there where the reason this recent round of hybrids per se was successful, but if you were to try it with some of these morphs of truly different species, specifically Traceae, Clastolepis, and Nauta, which are further removed from the, Papua New Guinea species, I don't know, just a thought there. Like, would you even be successful? Like, have they been split for so long that it just wouldn't make a difference?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon makes a good point. I think you are right that the genetically speaking, Tannenbars are actually most closely related to Kinghorni. Funny enough,
really,
I've heard that. I feel like I have heard that.
I haven't seen a Somali phylogenetics chart, so I personally can't comment on that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I hope that as a hobby community around these snakes that we can just promote the value in the pure stuff and, make that the North Star that we're all kind of following. And I think that like what Scott's earlier point about carpets, green trees, and boas, I think a lot of those species were kind of coming into prominence when the morph chase kind of mentality was really popping off, when ball pythons were starting to become a thing, when leopard gecko morphs and corn snake morphs and everything. Like morphs as a whole are over the hill. Just straight, like they've seen their heyday. That's in my opinion.
To prove that point, when was the last time that someone premiered a morph and then you heard about it? Like people clamored about it. I don't know. It's been 10 years for me. Like I've not, besides like that ivory scrub. Like
say, yeah,
we're talking about like
yeah,
a ball python morph, and I haven't heard about a new ball python morph since like the Pompeii. That was like the last big thing that I heard about.
Combo. That was a combo of genes that had been there forever. I think the one that I would point to would be the ocelot retic.
That and then the super druid blood python or the piebald blood pythons that got a lot of traction.
I mean the pie burn, similar kind of
that hype that was there 10, 15, 20 years ago for morphs is not there anymore.
And I don't think it'll ever come back. But what's really the hype these days are like something like 100 flower rat snake. Like, those are 10 times as valuable as they were 10 years ago. Or like the like really nice dark, like the TSK line hunter and milk snakes, stuff like that. I think that a lot of the refinement within a species, to me, seems to be great point here. The albino gaboons.
Ooh.
Those
that
caused a stir. That's a great one. That's a good call.
Did you watch the video of those being born?
I don't know.
The mother died and they did a C-section on her and they were pulling them out and the babies weren't breathing and they were giving them mouth to mouth, bro. It's on YouTube. Check it out. It's insane. It's so crazy. The first one, they were giving them
to a gaboon viper.
Bro. Yes. It is absolutely wild. I'll find it and I'll send it to you guys afterwards because it's on YouTube, or it was on YouTube. I don't know if it still is, but I'm pretty sure it is. That was such a wild, like I said, I don't really post a lot of this stuff, but I follow everything. So when I saw those albino gaboons, I was like, I need to figure out where they came from. And I see the video of them, cutting it, and they pull one out and they're like, it's an albino, and they put it down. They're like looking in there and pull. There's another one and another one.
Oh my god! If I was in the same situation and my two options were let them die or mouth to mouth resuscitation with gaboon viper, they would die.
They would die. Yeah, I'm not about to do mouth to mouth with one twitch and the fang just like
With how long their fangs are, it'll give you like a nice you'll be hanging a gaboon off of your mouth.
It is pretty wild, man. And you know what? Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I remember it wrong. Maybe they were using straws or something, but I remember them putting them like really close to their face.
Jeez, man. Yeah, I don't know, but like, I just don't think that there's been a morph. I can't remember. I'll try to think of one like that changed the entire discussion around a species. I just can't. I can't think of
some of the blue tongue skink stuff that Heather Moy's working with has been gaining a lot of attention.
Melanistics and albinos and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've been around for a while. Those have been around for like 10, 15 years in the US.
Yep.
But I just feel like now those are being talked about more. Honestly, probably because they're in capable hands. I mean, she's an incredibly talented breeder, super smart. Yeah. I try to talk to her and Ron at Tinley for advice, and then I just feel incredibly dumb. Like they think differently. I admire it, but like that's what I'm saying is that again, it's a morph where So maybe it's just a case where morphs have to start getting into the right and capable hands, and people will be getting excited about it because all the morphs that are currently in the trade, anybody can replicate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel you. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that a lot of this will come down to just how it's approached, who's spearheading these projects, the ethos behind why we're doing it in the first place. And I think the fact that we have so many examples to go off of how things go wrong. I mean, I think the only one where things really haven't gone wrong, I guess some may argue it, but I would say with green tree pythons, I would say that's the only community that went really deep down the rabbit hole of hybridization and going for just the look that really isn't any worse for wear, aside from some localities being pretty rare, but imports are still a thing. And like the animals aren't suffering, maybe either of you disagree with that. But I think that Rob, you seem very deep in thought right now. But I feel like there's been a balance has been struck to where both can kind of coexist together. But I think what I've said before, and it definitely holds true, is with how much Brandon beat me to it. They've kept really tight track of what they've done and why they've done it. And if you're a green tree python seller and you're trying to even slightly misrepresent your animal, you are going to get dragged all across the internet until you're laying on your back saying, I quit. So like they've created this very strong community of like, we care very deeply about what we're doing and representing what we're doing. And like the people who are considered the top of the field, they can trace their snakes back decades. Yeah. Oh, fuck. So I don't know. I see that, and I think that like as a scrub python community, we need to be doing the same thing, and that's what's going to eventually separate those who take it seriously from those who don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, as far as like, can we moderate it? Who knows? Like me and you, I mean, like the people who are really serious about scrub pythons, we're in those groups like almost every day. Like I'll admit I'm not in there every single day, but I do check on that group pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I do keep pretty close watch on like all the different things that are going on. And like I said, what people do in their own collection is their own business. I'm not going to be stopping people from doing what they're doing. But largely the people who are into scrubs, I think that there's a little bit of a skew where we might be able to curb some of this, because I feel like a lot of the people who are getting into scrubs right now are not getting into breed scrubs. They're getting in because they just like them. Absolutely. And they're not in like this, like, we got to breed it mentality that all those other species are.
Those who are getting into breed scrubs are getting a pair or two pairs. Yeah. They're like, I haven't had one person ever reach out to me like, I want a collection like yours. Yeah. Not once. Mm-hmm. That'd be sick for me because I'd be able to sell a lot of snakes, but no, and I don't really want to do that though, So yeah, I think you're definitely right on that. Of there isn't like a big push to be like a mass producer of scrub pythons or anything like that.
Even just to breed them, that like, I don't want to say that everyone, but a lot of the people who have reached out to me about getting into scrubs have just been like, I just really want to get one to see what they're like, and they're like, I just really like this snake. They're not being like, oh, well, I've got to get 6 more and I really want to try and breed them. Even the people who are like, I could maybe think about breeding them. A lot of those people are like, I don't know if I would be up to it, because they are more complicated. They do require a little bit more attention paid to them and learning a little bit more about them. Yeah. And so even the people I know who have pairs, they're like, I don't know if I'm going to breed them. I'm just enjoying them and just like, kind of really taking the snake for what it is right now, and I'm not really thinking about where that is going to go in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with that said, though, the hobby does need people to breed their scrub pythons as well. Especially as the community grows, as more people get into it. Just the like 5 to 10 of us who are really focused on it we're not going to be able to support it, just straight up. And a lot of these captive bred animals, especially the rarer stuff like the Halmaheras, the orange Highlands, some of these barnecks, like the ones that you're not seeing produced very often, even at this point, the Waminas, those animals are important for the next generation. So, I think, yes, I personally also love when people reach out to me just wanting a scrub python for a pet, but there's a responsibility to it as well, especially in these early days. Like in 10 years, a pet scrub python's not going to hurt anybody, but a pet Halmahera right now is a travesty. Same way a pet Boelen's python, I always say, like, a pet Boelen's python's like taking a Boelen's python and cutting its head off. Like, if
it's a female,
it's a bit dramatic, but like, it's just, we're not there yet, on some of these things. I think Southerns, Barnecks, that's a different story. But some of the more rare locality types, at least these first, the first few years of these things being bred, these animals are very important. So if you want a pet scrub python, maybe get one of the more common types. The whole ecosystem kind of works together, but we also have to be conscious that imports are much more uncommon these days. We're not seeing every Indo shipment doesn't have 40 scrubs on it anymore. Like, there's Arus in the country right now for the first time in probably 6 years. And maybe these are the only ones that'll be here for the next 6 years. So, stuff like that. And it's also like we say scrub pythons, but we're also legitimately talking about like 10 different locality types of animals. Like, we're talking about one of the largest, if not the largest, complex of pythons. So, it's not like we're talking about short tails where you're looking at 3 species, or like, rock pythons where there's like 4 species, 5 species, like, and I say that meaning like even like Burmese Indian, Sri Lankans, and like, the bigger rock python, so to speak. So, it's really cool. That's why I like the scrubs so much, is that there is so much diversity in them, but you can't treat every locality type or species the same as the next, as far as like how to treat them from a hobby standpoint. If that makes any sense. So I don't know.
Absolutely. That and we've talked about this a little bit, but like, there's room. If people do want to breed stuff, there's room for all of that if they do choose to go down that.
Absolutely.
I think about, and I've talked about this on the Reptile Talk podcast a little bit, but like, think about ball pythons, right? And think about like where ball pythons started. They're brown and black. They're, very drab coloration. And then you look at where they've come to with, like I was saying earlier, the Pompeys. Those things are like, when they're born, bright red and orange, yellow, and like these colors that you would never ever expect out of a ball python if you saw the natural wild type. Yeah. And even with just selective breeding, you can make really nice colored ball pythons. We've done hardly any selective, we're maybe 2 generations in of selectively breeding on scrubs. There is so much room for people to do really incredible things in all of in Waminas, or Jaipuras, in the Barnecks, in the Highlands, in all of it. There's so much room for people to make really cool stuff and kind of carve out their own little niche of things that they're going to do. And there's so much room for that. And it's just like, when I think about the scrub, like, breeding community, that's one of the things that I think of, is like everyone could be doing their own thing and no one would be overlapping on, they could very easily make it so that no one overlaps in the things that they're producing and still have so much diversity.
Yeah. 100%. And that's like, we're at this point, like, people like us who've been, keeping scrubs for as long as we have, like, someone could get into scrubs today and in 10 years be at the forefront of the project they chose. because it's one that neither of us are super heavily focused on. Like for me, like with the Barnecks, those are my main focus, but I have like a few very defined goals. And because I'm like, I can't, if I want to produce these that I want the best of my ability, I can't be spread super thin everywhere with this phenotype of Barneck and that phenotype of Barneck, that color pattern combo, that color pattern combo. Like,
Yeah.
if I don't stick to a few, I'm not going to produce anything at the highest level. So then every other possibility is up for somebody else to come grab. Like, the Barnecks that you're producing aren't going to look like the ones that I'm producing, aren't going to look like the ones that TJ produced, aren't going to look like the ones that Aspen's going to hatch out this year. Like,
I'm so hyped about that clutch, man. I'm not gonna lie.
I am too.
Dude, so Aspen and I went herping in Utah a couple years ago, and he was talking to me about his scrub pythons. He showed me a picture. I'm pretty sure he showed me a picture of that snake on that trip, and I was like, dude, oh my god, that thing is freaking incredible. And then when I saw him at Carpet Fest, he was showing me another picture, and so I was talking to him about like how I like kind of pair things up and do this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, dude, if you make a clutch of those babies, I need one of those freaking babies. This is the coolest Barneck. And so I was like kind of like loosely keeping track with him. And when he sent me that picture, I was like, let's fucking go, bro. That thing's so fucking incredible. I love that snake, and I'm so hyped for those eggs to hatch out. I am so over the moon about that freaking clutch, man. I'm more excited about that clutch than my clutch.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, like that's gonna be, those animals are gonna be such a great contribution to the captive bloodlines that we have. I mean,
yes,
yeah, like hyper melanistic Barnecks are very few and far in between, and he got a clutch from 2 of them. So yeah. Those are going to be something special, man. Those are going to be something special. So
hell yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to jinx it too hard because it's still in the incubator. But he posted them, so we can talk about it. If he didn't post them, that would be a different story. Oh shoot! I'm trying to look back at these notes we had from earlier. Alex, I feel bad that we've been hitting scrubs this whole time. Well, you are muted, my friend.
My bad.
You're good. But
sure, you didn't mute me.
That was you, my friend.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been enjoying listening to the scrub combo, and it's exciting. And I don't know, I feel like it's nice to be able to at least share and talk scrubs. Like I said, although most of my experience is working with your collection, Steven, I think it's cool. I think they're great snakes. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, dude, if you want to take this over some arachnid talk with you guys, I'll gladly take a back seat for you guys to nerd out for a bit, because this was on the agenda, so I don't want to,
Oh man, arachnid! Dang, I've never actually talked about my ever-growing arachnid addiction on a podcast.
I feel like no one probably even really knows about your arachnid addiction.
Oh, it's bad. Oh god, it was so bad. They weren't the tarantula people were not kidding when they said they are addicting. I said, no, because one of my good friends, and like, to be fair, like, backstory on this, the pet shop I worked at, nobody took care of the arachnids. So my boss said, you're going to become our spider person. And that just went, down the line of, well, I guess I got to work with everything we have in inventory. So then learning how to rehouse and work with new worlds, old worlds, carefully work with, the species that have urticating hairs and whatnot. And, you do that for 5 years and you work with a couple hundred species, you get an idea of what you like. And thankfully, Rob has very similar tastes in the arboreal tarantula game. And quite literally, I really have a thing for, other than Salmopius. I do like Salmopius. That's probably the one genus in New Worlds I get really excited about. But old world arboreal tarantulas, man. Poikilotheria, the sort of, I don't know if you want to call them arboreal, but even just some of the really gangly, leggy, beautiful, Chiropagopus, Omothymus, Lampropelma, like that's That's what I like in tarantulas.
Mhm.
And I think they're wonderful. And I mean, I feel like, Rob, you've been keeping arachnids longer than I have. I mean, I feel like the spider hobby is just taking off. Like, that's just me though. Now that I'm even more involved in it, like I started following more things and, reading what I can. I just feel like more and more people are starting to normalize the keeping of arachnids. And I mean, I think it's cool, something different.
Yeah, I think that the main thing that's kind of pushed people over the edge is TikTok. I hate to say TikTok and like Instagram and YouTube and stuff, but jumping spiders has been people's gateway drugs into arachnids. And people see a video of I think the first one that like really caught people's eyes was the peacock jumping spiders from Australia, the males with their little mating dance that they do, really just like went really viral, like crazy viral. And people who didn't really like spiders were like, oh, that thing's kind of cute. And then they see a couple more videos of some jumping spiders. They're like, oh, you know what? Maybe not all spiders are bad. And then they see a P Metallica and they're like, yo, what the hell is that thing? And, see a Caribana versicolor. And, then people are hooked. And it's like, they're like, I got to learn more about these things. They're so interesting. And so, yeah, the arachnid hobby is like exploding right now. And a lot of it is people who are just keeping jumping spiders, which no hate to those people. Okay, cool. Do your thing. But then a lot of people who get jumping spiders, then they get, a New World something or other, Vicularia, Caribana, something like that. And then the floodgates open and you're like, oh, these things are so cool and they're so pretty. And oh crap, they're all $20. I can get it takes me 1 hour every week to take care of 100 spiders. This is incredible. I can have 300 of these things. This is great. And then it's like it's so easy to get in the deep end when it comes to spiders. And I honestly, that's part of the hobby, the arachnid hobby, that I don't like, is it's really easy to get into the deep end very quickly. I see some people who get their first spider as like a New World terrestrial, and then in 2 months they're keeping Pulsatharia and Stromatopelma and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, these things still have medically significant venom. Please don't. You have no experience. You're still afraid of spiders a little bit. What happens if it jumps on you? Like Stromatopelma jump. They will jump on you and they will bite you. And they have really toxic venom. Please reconsider before diving wholeheartedly into the deep end. I'm glad that you're excited. I'm glad that you really wanted to get a cool spider that you saw online, but please, please, please reconsider jumping straight into the deep end head first with a cinder block on your back. Like, people are like, yeah, but they haven't killed anyone. I'm like, yet you could be the idiot that dies. Like,
I thought there was a bite report. I thought there was a mortality report from Ghana.
There was
one from Stromatopelma calceatum, right? She was bit on the back of the neck though, and they think it got infected, but
no
still.
And I think there was one tarantula death a couple years ago in the U.S. and it was the first one ever documented.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Dang.
So, people are like, yeah, but it's not going to kill you. It's like, how do you know? You don't know what your body's going to do to that foreign liquid that just got injected into it. Like, come on, please. That I do have gripes about the arachnid hobby, but in whole, I really do like it. But people do go really ham really fast, and that always has bothered me about the arachnid hobby.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of why sometimes I wonder if it was like a blessing that I had all that experience working with it. Because I mean, my first tarantulas were yellowback ornamentals, Poikilotheria Smith. But I had 3 years of working and rehousing dozens. Like I don't even then, like with my tarantulas, I don't handle stuff. I treat them like fish, right? So like even when I was working with New Worlds, it's paintbrushes, gloves, catch cups. I let them do their thing. I think they're wonderful to look at. Like I've got a ghost ornamental. Whenever he's out, he stretches on his bark. I'm pretty sure it's a male, unfortunately. We'll see in a couple molts. But, it's like, that's what I would, like it's rewarding. But yeah, at the end of the day, when you have to get to that point of rehousing, that's where a medically significant interaction could come in. And it's people need to consider that, especially like you were saying with some of the other the heavy hitting species where, like, if you look at bite reports on arachnivores and whatnot, it's not fun. It's not pretty. And it's scary because, like you mentioned Stromatopelma, reading the bite reports from people saying they're bitten by, like, 2-3 inch specimens,
little ones.
yeah, and they're like, I wanted to die. It's like, imagine like what an actual dose from an adult, because I say Stromatopelma, I think they can get like 6-7 inches. Like they're them and the Heteroscrodra. I say I wish I had a rough DLSS. I have an adult female Stromatopelma calceatum, but I've only ever seen her twice because she just lives in her tube, and that's great. But whenever I see her out, I'm like, damn, that's a beautiful spider. And thankfully, she's where there's going to be no rehouses in the future. But oh man, it's like there's definitely like responsibility there. But I think it's, like I said, to me they're like fish. I mean, I grew up with fish, so I don't mind having pets that I can't touch, but there's something different about it, something rewarding. Don't think I'm going to get into breeding them anytime soon, though. I just like raising them.
It's such a pain in the butt, honestly. There's so many different things. Like, first, it's stressful because introductions, you get your females that potentially eat your males, or worse, your male hurts your female because a lot of the females take so long to get to reproductive age and size. And then what are you going to do with all those babies? Like, even the lower end species, 40 babies at a time at a clip. And then you get things like the geniculata that have 1,000 to 2,000 babies per egg sac. And it's like, bro, I don't want to take care of it.
Lazy Adora.
100 baby tarantulas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. Not yet. I just like raising them. If I get mature males, they go to my buddy who's a spider breeder, and I just get 2 slings. Yeah, I call it even there. I like playing the lone game there. So then I don't have to do
bred Ephebopus marinus, the skeleton legs.
Yep.
I bred those, and that's when I was at Nerd. So I like just cupped all the babies and put them in the pet store, and I was like, get them out of here, everyone get one free with their their purchase, and then I bred the Sophisca Highlands, and I got egg sacs twice, and the female ate the egg sacs both times. And yeah, it hurt. That one hurt a lot because
those
the
are
first
gorgeous.
time I was like, I'm just going to let her hatch them in there. And then one day I came in and it was gone, and I was like, no, this is horrible. And the second time I saw her making the sac. I saw her with, like, when she bundled it up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pull it tomorrow, so it's not like a stress on her after she just laid it. And the next day I went in there and she ate it, and I was so bummed. Because I wanted to. That's like one of my favorite species, period. So I was really hoping that I would be able to get some babies out of that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The pokies are at the top of the first one that I really had the privilege to work with was a Regalis. And it was it was the one where when it came into the shop, that was the one that I just started gravitating towards, Oh, hell. Is that Regalis or?
It's supposed to be. It's a very liberal representation of a Regalis.
Okay. That was always like a dream tattoo idea of mine, would be to do a full leg sleeve with like 7 or 8 of the species and then webbing. Have like a Metallica, a Rufilata, Matata and whatnot. But they're wonderful, and I just love how hardy they are. I feel like as far as old worlds go, like I said, the potential of a medically significant bite is something that definitely has to be considered with that genus. But like, I've had them get dry on accident, and I feel like I have messed up way too many times with Avix and Carabina, where like
you look at them wrong and they die. You don't get enough ventilation, like pick them up off the shelf enough and they fucking die.
Yeah, it's so I do. I feel like the hobby's definitely gonna be growing with them. I haven't had the privilege of owning Metallica yet, which I know is like the holy grail for most people. For me, it's just, I think the reason they're like, it's because my first was Regalis. I like black and white spiders, man. It's like Batata, Miranda. I don't know, man, though. You were showing me your Tigrina Wesselii. Formosa. I like Formosa, got like the purple. I don't know what's with
purple
the like
highlight.
The whole genus is phenomenal. So yeah, tarantulas are epic. I'm happy we at least got to touch on them. But They'll have to be, honestly, they'll have to be a whole arboreal arachnids deep dive. That's got to happen one day on the Trap Talk Arachnid Network special.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dude, easy there, Tiger.
All right.
I just like any of the spiders that have contrast. So like basically anything that's got contrast. So like it doesn't really matter whether it's old world or new world. If it's got contrast, I'm like, okay, that's a cool spider. Me and Nisar go back and forth because he likes a lot of the like Pimphobetus and Xenethus.
Xenethus, yeah.
What is it? Formigopus?
Formigocylus. Yep. Whatever.
The brown ones, they're all just plain brown. I'm so over it, man. They all look the same to me. I need something that's got pattern on it. I need some color, damn it.
I like those. The black, the jet black Formiga. It's like, I think that's the Borneo black, but I don't like.
No, I mean the man, I cannot remember the name of it.
Formictopus.
It's another plain brown one from South America.
So yeah, sorry. Formigocylus is old world. Yeah, the larger brown spiders and the new Formictopus.
Formictopus, that's the ones.
Dominican purple. Yeah, those are awesome. Those get big too. I mean, that's like just under like their, other than them, it's probably Therafosa, which is just the larger, but they're cool. I like them.
And then I think some of the Megaphobema stuff gets pretty decent size too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen some, the what's the species that common name's a Colombian giant redleg, but I mean, I've seen those seven
like inches. The Megaphobema robustum, they get the Velva sternum or whatever, and there's another one too. I can't remember.
I've worked with robustum, and those are the ones that we had to get good size. Those are cool.
Yeah. I don't know, anything that's got contrast. So like I like the Monocentripus balfouri, the Herpicura pulchripes, all the Poecilotheria, all the contrast and everything. That's why I like the H-Max, the Heteroscodra maculata, more than the Stromatopelma calceatum, because they got better contrast.
That is fair. Yeah, man, I don't know. For me, it's just I like the more feathering on the Stromatopelma. That's just me. But I mean, to be fair, one of my other Stromatopelma, I bought as an H-Mac. It was just a sling that came off of a wild caught gravid female. I was like, $10, sweet. It's a F1 H-Mac and it's a Stromatopelma. So maybe I'll have to. I need to see at Tinley if somebody will have some legit ones, and maybe I'll have to give those a shot. But it's like that.
Tell you how many of those I've seen where people have them labeled as H-Max and there's Stromatopelma calceatum.
Yeah, I mean, do their ranges overlap, or is it like niche partitioning? Because they both come out of Ghana and Togo. I know both species are present there.
I'm not sure, but I will look on iNaturalist after we're done.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Like, if one prefers like a wetter environment, or one there's got to be something, because morphologically they're very they look similar, but from what I understand, the reason they're two separate genres or genus is because there's quite a few differences in like the hair morphology or something on them. They're cool though. So I still need to get my hands on an H-Mac one of these days, but we'll see.
Awesome. You should get some.
We're walking around Tinley and I'm just going to hear that in my ear. Get it.
Yeah.
What? Oh my God.
If it's the October one, I'm just going to walk up to you and just be like, here you go.
I'm not going to say no. As long as you didn't take it off a table.
I like them. They're cool.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, I feel like any spider fans are in heaven right now. Anyone who doesn't know spiders' brains hurt. So there's going to be
probably.
I'm sorry, Steven.
No, not at all. Just, I mean, it is interesting though that certain communities, they'll refer to everything by either a Latin or a common name, and I mean, like Brooke keeps a bunch of arachnids, and I am totally lost. But it's like she probably knows everything that you guys are saying right now. Me, I'm on the opposite. We're like, some of those Latin names that you guys just rattled off that are like 8 syllables long. I'm just like, what just happened?
Oh yeah, dude! Freaking the ram swarm ornamental Poecilotheria Hanumovia sumica. Like
too much. That one is too much.
My one friend, he just goes, yeah, the one that's like Hanumanalatscava. I was like, no.
That's basically what I do. I'm like, it's Poecilotheria Hama something or other. It's like this long. I don't want to. I can never figure out how to pronounce it, so it's the Hamana whatever.
Yeah. Those are rare though. I don't see those very often. I want that species. I mean, the dream goal would be to have like the infinity gauntlets of the entire
Yeah, of
genus,
all of
but
them.
that'll be tricky. I'll try where I
So,
can.
Steven, the reason why people use the Latin names is because there is like 6 different species of tarantula that are named like red leg or bird eater or this or that. There's like, oh, if you go to this country, they call this one the red leg bird eater. If you go to this one, they call this one the red leg bird eater, but they're completely different, like genus, completely different spiders altogether.
Yeah,
But the common name is shared throughout the entire region for like 10 different spiders. Got
it. Yeah, no, I feel like I've heard that before, but yeah, that's super annoying.
Yeah, it's horrible. Because I get people who come into the pet store and they're like, "Oh, I'm trying to get a red leg," and I'm like, "Okay," so I get a Brachypelma bomai out, and they're like, "No, like a red leg," and I'm like, "Okay, maybe they mean like the flame one. Nope, not that one. I bring out a Harmorine. Nope, not that one." And I'm like, which one do you mean?
I mean, like how many species of spiders are available in the hobby with some amount of regularity?
Probably what, like 800-900?
Probably somewhere around there, yeah. Yeah.
In the hobby?
Yeah. With like commonly available. Yeah. Yeah.
Steven's mind.
Here's the deal.
Wow.
There's like what?
Morphs colubrids.
Oh yeah.
There are like 10 different species of Brachypelma, at least like 10 to 15 species of Brachypelma alone. There's like what? 10 species of Poecilotheria alone. Yeah. There's like
16. Yeah.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, because they just did Ragi and Sri Lankanensis.
Yeah.
How do you know all of this? How can you retain all of it?
So the only reason that I can say I know it is
2.5 hours in, the tism comes up. It's 10 o'clock, baby.
It's gotta be. There's no other explanation. There is no other explanation. Okay.
11:28 p.m. Eastern time is officially 10 o'clock.
It is. When we're talking about all the different Latin names of spiders, it is. It's that time. My parents are like, "No, he's normal," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am very normal. I can only eat 3 things, and I can remember 700 species of tarantula Latin names."
I wonder if I even know that many reptile Latin names.
You probably do.
Maybe.
One of my old coworkers used to have a list. Oh, I wouldn't do it right now, but I would say like one of my old coworkers when I was working at the pet shop, he had a list of every U.S. native snake, and randomly throughout the day, he'd just start saying the Latin name, and I'd give him the common name.
Yes.
So yeah, he'd be like Arizona elegans. I'd be like, oh, glossy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just something stupid like that.
Brandon's question is a good one and one that we should talk about, Alex, if you know the answer to that, because I know the answer to that.
Oh yeah. People do it, but it's really like I feel like the tarantula community way more frowns upon hybrids. I mean, because some of the species you can realistically only identify by like counting the number of hairs and stuff on the legs, and it's that, or like with some of them, I want to say it's mostly the genus I mentioned earlier with Rob, like Omothymus, Chireopagopus, and then there's a fossorial old world group called Chelobrachys. Some of them, the only
platypus.
Harry the platypus.
Harry the platypus.
The tarantula puts on a little hat and a duckbill. But what was I saying?
Again.
Yeah.
So there are some tarantula hybrids that have been made. It's been a lot of like Brachypelma species because they are very like closely related, but a lot of tarantula species actually cannot be physically hybridized because the male's reproductive organs, which are at the end of their pedipalps, I'm drawing a blank on what the frick those things are called right now.
Spermatothe or something.
So
right.
the spermatozoa are like on the inside of the female, right?
Oh,
And
right.
so the opening for the females where their reproductive organs are, the opening is this very certain shape, and it's only shaped to fit the reproductive organs of the specific male from that species. And so some of them have very unusual shapes, and so it's physically not possible for a lot of species of tarantulas to hybridize because of the shapes of, man, I cannot remember what the heck that thing's called at the end. I just call them their little boxing gloves. At the end of the pedipalps is where the males get their sperm injectors, basically. So the females underneath, they have an opening called the epigastric furrow, and that's where their spermatozoa are, the opening where the females receive the sperm, and the males get the little boxing gloves on the end of their pedipalps, and they'll hold the female up and tap the sperm into that opening underneath the female. But the male's organs are shaped for the specific species female that they're breeding with. So a lot of them cannot breed across different genera because of the shape of those freaking things. I'm going to look this up. This is going to bother me, bro. But a lot of that can't be done. Some of them, there have been Brachypelma species hybrids made because they're really closely related and the spermatozoa are very similarly shaped. But
Poikilotheria too.
They can't hybridize a lot of them.
Yeah, so it can be they're cool though.
They're very cool.
Brooke will corrupt you one day.
And so there have been some hybridized tarantulas made, and people will they won't burn your house down, but they will come after you if you try to make hybrid tarantulas. They are really strongly against it in the tarantula hobby. Come on.
So,
This is going to bother me.
I like the anti-hybrid theme that we've had this episode. It's been very
And we didn't even talk about the scrub retic things.
And I don't think we need to because we're 2.5 hours.
Is that a thing?
You didn't see them?
Oh God.
They called them Super Timor pythons.
Oh, but that's not a scrub. That's not a scrub retake. That's a Timor retake.
Oh, was that okay? Okay, my bad.
I had a heart attack at TISM 30. You almost got me there. My gosh. That's my biggest nightmare.
I'm pretty sure I've seen. So I'm undercover in the reptile hybrids group, so I know who not to sell my snakes to. But there have been a couple people who've been breeding their scrubs to like berms and to retics and to things along those lines. Yeah, over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Join the group just so you can watch, because
no, I'll just take your word for it. I don't need that kind of negative.
I'll send you screenshots.
Okay. Huh. I mean, like I had like retic people who were like, oh, I've always wanted to breed a barnack to a retic, and I'm just like,
so
yeah,
you want
no.
a snake that is incredibly powerful and also going to outsmart you and want to hurt you? No. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. No, yeah, those I don't know. Well, I don't want to. You guys were still on your spider time. I don't want to interrupt. We could definitely get back to get down the rabbit hole of the Timor hybrid situation, but
I mean, that's all there is to spider that I'm thinking of right now. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I'm starting to burn the midnight oil, and I got to be up early for work. But yes,
yeah, no, I mean we've got 2.5 hours under our belt. That's that's definitely not a short podcast by any means. Yeah,
hybrid roundtable talk part 2.
No. It's going to be me angrily screaming into a microphone for 2 hours.
What if we just say that the hemipenes of different scrub species aren't compatible with the hemicliteri of the females, and it's just like quite literally impossible for them to actually mate properly? So
hypothetically, that is a possibility.
It would make things so much easier.
Imagine how many things have been known as truth in the reptile hobby forever because someone just made it up. Like,
yeah,
there's so many things where that's been the case. Let's just make this up right now. You want to breed a barnack to a tannenbar? Too bad they can't do it. you want to know how I know? Someone told me that they tried it, and they did science, and they did, sorry, it's just you can't do it. I don't make the rules.
Bro, after seeing some of the snakes and seeing their like hemipenes, I would not even doubt that sometimes, because some of them have got some really freaky looking freaking hemipenes.
Well, I say we had Dr. Robert Jaden on, and that's how he distinguished some of the different cloud vipers. The hemipenal anatomy is different. It's lock and key speciation. It's actually pretty fascinating. But
yep.
Hemipene connoisseur.
I need that on a t-shirt. Like Justice Smith made the "Don't be a hemipene" shirt with like.
Oh yeah, I have that as a coffee mug. I love it.
I think I need a hemipene connoisseur one.
Yeah.
Oh, just trying to start a fight now. I see how it is.
This is a real Tism 30 kind of comment right here.
Yeah, for real. What the hell is that?
Oh my god.
That's about on par with somebody saying they're going to hybridize Eastern and Texas indigos.
I think it's a lot worse.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Why? So
it should be the indigos. It should be the dry markin.
Very triangular.
The Crebos.
You know what, Brandon? You're very right. We can't let that one go. Some things that come across our radar, we can't just accept them. And that is one that is not acceptable at all. They say, I have an indigo from Veracruz and a tiger rat from Veracruz. They're both from Veracruz. And I said, no one's ever been as wrong as you were wrong right now. You might as well take a rattlesnake from Veracruz and make it a triple hybrid and then breed it to a Tenosaura. That's what I think. Deported. I don't care where to. You're deported somewhere right now.
Oh no. You're fired.
Oh my god. Oh man. Maybe this podcast is fully off the rails at this point.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there was rumors of someone breeding Antaracea to corn snakes before, so.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's like taxonomically, that's like family. I mean, that's wow.
It's like trying to breed a pigeon to a salmon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that literally is.
What the?
Although I have seen people breed boas to anacondas. The boa conda.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, but that's a
remember
whole
when
hell of a lot closer than.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's like total. Yeah,
It's still
different-
closer.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, same family but different genus. But yeah, I guess you're trying to breed a
Probably
python.
overlap in population, at least in range, maybe not in niche, but
Yeah.
But yeah,
One's a water boa, one's a tree boa.
Yeah.
And people have made ball python woma hybrids, and womas don't even have labial heat pits.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but they're still pythons. So like,
Yeah. But like, I mean, you don't see those anymore, you know.
Mm-mm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like hybrids in general aren't that popular, like across the board. Like I just feel like hybrid reptiles are too sought after.
I think that they're kind of sought after, but like, it's really hard to produce them. And if you talk to anyone who is trying to sell you a hybrid, they'll be like, no, they reproduce fine and they're very healthy because hybrid vigor. And it's like, try to talk to anyone who is not trying to sell you a hybrid about a hybrid. And no, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. You can sometimes get things that are very closely related that hybridize and they're okay. Like, you know, people do, you know, like I said, the blood hybrids, the blood and short tail hybrids, and those animals live and reproduce. That does not mean that that the hybrids as a whole are a more healthy snake because of hybrid vigor. That's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, that can
anyone who is trying to sell you one, and that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that that term exists makes a great little marketing scheme that you can use in a, you know, in a moment. But
yeah, I've seen a lot of different hybrids.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of different hybrids.
Yeah.
and followed a bunch of different things and watched and talked to people who have made them and talked to people like behind the scenes who have made stuff. And very few hybrids are actually like okay,
Yeah.
mentally, physically,
Mhm.
etc. Most of them are not well.
Yeah. No, gosh, these bull snakes are loud. Yeah, no, and I think probably for better ultimately. I don't know. I just like what project would anyone really look at and be like, I'm stoked about this long-term hybrid project? Like, I don't
Some of the
know.
ball python guys are geeked up about their ball python morph hybrids.
What do you mean? Like with
There's been
Golans or something or what?
with Angolans, with bloods and
Oh.
short tails. The people who did burn balls, they're all hyped up about their albino burn balls and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm in the hybrid group. I watch all these
Yeah. Fair enough.
high IQ individuals do what they're going to do and the things that they talk about. Honestly, I try to limit my amount of time in those groups because it gives me a headache. But they are very hyped about a lot of the morph crosses because, of course, put morphs into everything. Why not?
Yeah. Well, they can stay in their little island. I don't know. Hide underground and make your hybrids in the dark. Don't burden all of us.
They will come to light. Trust me, they'll come to light.
The purge will happen.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Imagine a reptile purge.
I don't want to.
No, I don't even want to think of what that would mean.
Honestly, what happened in Florida 2 years ago was a hint of what that could be. That terrifies me. So,
yeah, true.
Not to change the tone and make it scary, but it's just, yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
No, for sure. Well, either of you guys have anything else you'd like to add in the later section of this show here, or do you think you guys are ready to wrap?
I'm good. I mean, all jokes and shenanigans aside, there's some great topics discussed tonight.
Yeah.
Between like the serious talks on the hybrids, I'm not gonna lie, I can't believe that it took me 6 years to finally like share publicly like photos and stuff of those albino water dragons. I think that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully maybe this encourages more people. One, like you said, with some of the oddball scrub pythons, like the Waminas, the Halmaheras, like pick up a pair. You don't have to be the next big time breeder, but as long as there's more people breeding and keeping them around, I think that's important. The same can be said about Chinese water dragons. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, there's really only one person in the country that I know of who has a sizable group of water dragons that could feasibly keep them around. But the reality is that it's not a 5 to 10 person job. There should be, there's always going to be somebody with a huge group of them. Steven, you've got a big group of scrubs, but Rob, you've got some really nice scrubs and you're producing them, right? Like, then it's all about balance. In my case, I sure as hell hope that there's going to be water dragon keepers out there with maybe a big group, say like 1 male and 3 females or a couple pairs, like it's important. And, yeah, I think and some fun arachnid talk, which probably rotted Steven's mind, but that's the start. We have to break that and then rebuild it so he starts keeping tarantulas. But yeah, I think it was a great episode, guys. This was a fun round table, Steven. I appreciate it, especially on short notice. This was better than I thought. I won't lie.
Good. Hell yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, I agree. This was an awesome episode. This was a really fun conversation. It was just like we were all just hanging out, shooting the shit for 3 hours. That's what this was. So
the only thing I wanted to touch on I saw there was a comment a little while back. Somebody was asking if I have Highland females for All-Star.
Yeah.
I do. I've got 2 patterned ones and 1 patternless one.
Nice.
The patternless one, I don't know. I might end up moving it on because it's not really what my plans are with the Highland project. But I've got 2 females. They're not. They're probably on the border of being able to produce size-wise this year, but I'm not going to try and breed them this year. I'm going to try breeding them next season. Okay. So I'll have 2 female Highlands that are ready to go next season.
Nice. Hell yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that would be tight. If I can get 1 clutch of Highlands, I'll be happy. And if I get 2, even better.
Yeah, no, I can speak from experience. They're super fun. Yeah, very, very. I mean, the babies are a different shade. They're like a lot more orange. Yeah, no, it was like shocking when I hatched them out, because that was the first non-bar neck scrub that I had produced. And when they hatched out, I was holding them like, these are not the same snake at all. They're super different.
Yep.
I mean, you know, obviously the no bars on the neck, you know, that's one thing, but just, yeah, I mean, like, you know, the kind of brick reddish bar neck color, very much like an orangish red on the Highland babies. So yeah, it was pretty cool, and definitely a different type of progression on the OCC. So yeah, they're incredible. I really hope that you can get some next year, especially with that male. He's such a freaking incredible snake. So
He's a stud, man. As soon as any of the females start cycling in the room, he is like at the edge of the enclosure, pushing, trying to get out. So it won't be for lack of trying on his part. It's just going to be whether or not they're ready to go. And the way that these females are eating and like a lot of my scrubs are very passive when it comes to eating, but these ones, no, they're like constantly looking for something, and they've been growing rapidly, even at the same clip of feeding as a lot of my other stuff. So they will be ready next spring for sure. Like no problem.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. I think that's the one thing that we didn't actually get into tonight is the feeding discussion.
Yeah, we can do that in 2.0.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we don't have hour 4 in us. So Alex definitely does not, and I don't want to speak for you.
I was saying I could talk forever, but
yeah.
Hopefully I don't look like I have bags under my eyes. This past week has been very much me running on caffeine only. So,
well,
oh no,
we very much appreciate you taking this time tonight, Alex, and we want to make sure you get some sleep tonight. So yeah, with all that said, Alex, I'll start with you. Where can everybody find you, keep up what you're doing, and all that good stuff?
Instagram, Facebook, Fauna Classifieds, at alexsagamids. You can email's the best way to contact me. So if you just click on like the little email button on those pages, I'll respond to that. You can message that page, but the reality is I only see those messages if I log on through my my like business suite app, which connects those pages. So email shows up on my phone, and I try to get back to that by the end of the day.
Cool. Hell yeah. Well,
especially if you want water dragons.
Should people contact you about wanting water dragons?
I've opened my wait list. That's all I'll say for now. Wait list is open. We'll just see where the year takes me.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, once again, thank you for your time tonight. This was awesome. I'm glad you were able to make it. This was a lot of fun.
I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, I'm going to throw you backstage and hit Rob next. We'll close this thing out.
Sounds good.
All righty. All right, Rob, same thing to you. Where can everyone keep up with everything you have going on?
Mostly on Instagram. Check me out. robiscreepingitreal. I do have a TikTok. I don't really post on there as much. I do have a YouTube, I guess, and same thing. robiscreepingitreal everywhere. I do have a morph market, but haven't posted stuff on there. I do eventually have to post some stuff up. I hate selling shit, so
yeah.
But yeah, anywhere robiscreepingitreal. Please do not add me on Facebook unless you have a very compelling argument of why I should add you on Facebook, because I really am over all the drama and bullshit that people post on Facebook. So everywhere else, add me, robiscreepingitreal. Give me a follow, and check out the Reptile Talk podcast I do with Jeremy, Brassman Reptiles. We do all that sort of jazz, and hell yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, awesome, man. Well, thank you again for your time tonight. Thank you for doing this on short notice. This was a lot of fun. All righty. Well, I'll close this out now. All righty. All right, everybody. Thank you for being with us tonight. If you were here on YouTube, please subscribe. We are on the audio platform, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. For me, I'm on Instagram at scrubshepherd, Stephen Kush on Facebook, Stephen Kush or at Kush Reptile on YouTube, Kush Reptile on Morph Market, and I'm here every Wednesday night on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. With all that said, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We'll catch you all back here next week for a new episode.